Student Board Member Mala.
Here.
Thank you. Now the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Student Board Member Mala, I'd like to ask you for the reading of the AUSD mission and vision statement and the Board of Education meeting norms, but would you like to split that up with somebody? That's a lot of reading.
I'm happy to do it.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. The mission of Albany Unified School District is to provide excellent public education that empowers all to achieve their fullest potential as productive citizens. AUSD is committed to creating comprehensive learning opportunities in a safe, supportive, and collaborative environment, addressing the individual needs of each student. Okay, meeting norms. 1, maintain a focus on what is best for our students. 2, show respect. Never dismiss/devalue others. 3, be willing to compromise. 4, disagree when necessary, agreeably. 5, make a commitment to effective deliberation, each one listening with an open mind while others are allowed to express their points of view.
6, participate by building on the thoughts of a fellow board member. 7, make a commitment to open communication and honesty, no surprises. 8, commit the time necessary to govern effectively. 9, be collaborative. 10, maintain confidentiality, which leads to the building of trust. 11, look upon history as lessons learned, focus on the present and the future.
Thank you. There was no action taken in closed session, which moves us to approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That brings us to Spotlight, Ocean View Elementary School.
Thank you, President Chutin. If I may, can we have the minutes reflected that Student Board Member Michaela Weinstein is present? Thank you. I would like to turn our spotlight over to Terry Georgeson, who is our principal of Ocean View Elementary School.
Good evening, Board and Superintendent Williams. I really want to start off by saying I appreciate the opportunity to come in and spotlight our school. I've worked at Ocean View as principal for 12 years and was a teacher there for 15 years. So the ability to be able to speak about education and my school in particular is something I'm really proud to do and get really excited about. In preparing for this evening's little presentation for you, I gave some thought to what is it that might help you understand a little bit more about what our school is about and what a principal's job is in trying to provide an education, much like the mission that was stated around empowering students and about providing a safe and supportive school environment. Teachers work really hard in the classroom to do that, but one of the limitations in the classroom is that when those doors open and the kids leave the classroom, many times there's no thread for conversation or for norms and expectations to live outside that classroom. So one of the things that happened for us here in Albany about 8 years ago was we had some training in what was called best behaviors. Those stuck with us very quickly, particularly at the elementary and I think up through middle school in particular. And those best behaviors you'll see on my campus written in many forms that talk about the 3 B's. Be safe, be responsible, and be respectful. And in the classroom, teachers will take that same message and they will tweak it a little bit to kind of fit their needs within the classroom. But the idea is to create a common thread of communication and expectations for students. And expectations in return for teachers. So what you have here tonight is a slideshow of one of the 3 assemblies that we give at Ocean View. We give one each trimester, and that message or that assembly is designed to help kids hear in an assembly setting what our school-wide behavior expectations are. Over the years, we have incorporated the videos that the BEST program provides, and then with the work from some very dedicated teachers outside their classroom, and I'd like to acknowledge them here tonight, is Rebecca Springer, who is our conflict manager teacher leader, Izzy Cohen, who is our fourth grade teacher who runs a community coaches program, and Katty Sobolski, our fifth grade teacher, who runs a student leadership. Combined, this year we started a student council, which brings in once a month a student representative from every classroom in the school, first grade through fifth, to meet and work with me and the teacher leaders around what are the topics going on that are important to kids. The teachers help run the meeting and give the kids talking points to take back to their classroom. Usually they take a talking point back, and then there's a question that they're asked to give to their classmates and then bring back to the following meeting. So that's something we've added this year to kind of add more student voice. So before we get started, very quickly, I just want to kind of tell you a little bit about what you're going to see. We offer student reward systems throughout the school year, and one of the most popular we give is an otter ticket. So you're going to see an otter ticket throughout here, and you're going to note that on that otter ticket, there's a place to indicate the student age or grade, what their classroom number is, and then you're going to see which best behavior were they caught doing. So I know the middle school does something like this also with a Cobra Katya, which my son got first month of his first year at the middle school, so I was very proud of him for doing that. But you're going to see in this is our second trimester otter ticket. So it talks about being assertive, showing perseverance, working well in groups, which can be on the playground as well as in the classroom, following school rules and routines, and in this particular video, you're going to see them talking about lunchroom behavior and how they can help our lunchroom staff, and then following the school rules and the peaceful playground policies. If the student is caught doing this, any adult on campus can hand them an otter ticket. In receiving that otter ticket, we have mailboxes in our third grade hallway, which they place those tickets. And then once a week, we pull out a winner from each grade level, announce it over the intercom, and the student from that grade level gets an otter ticket or gets an otter pop. We've added community coaching rewards as well as a couple others specifically, and one will be noted in here as the winner of the Safe Walking Challenge, which we had during the second trimester. So what I'd like to do is just go ahead and start the video, and you'll see that this is part of our assemblies that we do 3, and if you're so inclined, our third one will be tomorrow morning. We have 2 assemblies, one at 8:45 and then one at 9:45.
Excuse me, can I have some personal space? Oh, sorry. It's okay. Give me that back. Can you please be careful with me? Can I please have that back? Thank you. I got a pet hamster. I got a pet hamster. I got a pet hamster. Can you please keep your head to yourself when you talk? Sorry. Coco, guess what? I got a pet hamster. Much better. Can you play with me? Can you play with me? Can you play with me? Can you please speak more calmly? Sorry, but I was trying to say, can you please play with me? Why are you sad? You don't pay attention to me. Maybe if you stand tall, you can get more attention. Okay. Hey, old man, do you want to go play some tetherball? Sure, but I was wondering if we could play tag first. Maybe after we play tetherball? Sure. Aiden, what are you playing with? Thank you.
So those were our third grade conflict managers.
Hi, I'm Yo-Yo. I'm a community coach. Hi, my name is Nick. I am a community coach. Hi, my name is Jason. I'm a community coach. Hi, my name is Kate, and I'm a community coach. Hi, my name is Maddie, and I'm a community coach. Hi, I'm David. I'm a community coach. Hi, my name is Lovina, and I'm a community coach. My name is Gabriella, and I am a community coach. Hi, my name is Dia, and I'm a community coach. Hi, my name is Lena. Hi, my name is Vicky. And we're community coaches. Tate, unfreeze me! On my way, Yo-Yo! Thanks for unfreezing me, Tate. You're welcome. I was just using my listening tool. David, unfreeze us! We would like to interrupt this play with a special announcement. That was what we community coaches call excellent play. Thank you for your patience. Why, thank you. I was just keeping myself entertained while waiting. Gotcha. Lena, I'm waiting, please. Lena, I tagged you. You're right, Maddie. Are you okay? Okay. So sorry. Okay, I guess I'll work on it. Fruit pop. Maybe I should share.
So with those tickets as well, we give announcements on Wednesdays. And for the kids in the grade levels that get them, we'll announce their names and give them Otter Pops as well. Very small price for something that kids really enjoy. One, hearing their names. Two, being acknowledged by their classmates and their peers. And then clearly getting a little reward for it. So it's something that they really enjoy.
keeping more food, spices all around.
I'm a yard aide. I help out in the cafeteria and also on the I would say the most important thing that everyone is doing to the school is just talk a little softer at the tables because when everyone's really loud, it makes it very difficult for us to hear students and to help them. And it makes it difficult for students to hear really nervousness. So there's a lot of chaos. So I think if everyone could just talk a little softer, it would really help.
One of our teachers' leaders is a big Star Wars fan.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
The two students with the trays are part of what we call our green team, and each class is given an opportunity to assign 4 students per week throughout the course of the year to be on that team to help clean up, keep our lunchroom clean. And this is the group of the students that were in these groups the first semester, or the first half of the year, and then the second half of the year we invited students to make applications and join it again. Anybody in the first group who wanted to go for a second part of the year were welcome to, but we wanted to give opportunities for new kids to be part of any of those 3 groups. And then I think finally, we end any of our own home assemblies with our song. We have 2 of our kindergarten teachers who will be moving to Cornell, sing the first verse, because we're going to use them next year as a way to kind of help keep faces familiar with staff and with students. So I'll let you hear them kind of lead us through the first verse of our song. All right, thank you guys very much.
Thank you so much. That was a really impressive view of how the kids help run the school at Ocean View. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and now that brings us to the consent calendar. Does anyone have anything they'd like to pull off of the consent calendar? No? Okay. I have a few comments. First of all, seeing the committee reassignment item on consent brought up some issues about the terms of committee membership that I think we'll need to deal with at a future meeting. So that probably should be agendized for maybe next August or something when we have plenty of open space. Secondly, I wanted to congratulate our Director of Food Services, Sabina Feinberg, for starting a program where we could get an intern to help our food services program. I think that they do have a reserve, but last year I believe that they fell about $20,000 short and needed to pull money out of their own reserve. And last year we hired a consultant who came in and did a student survey to find ways to better serve the high school students. And I think that this intern is going to help put into action some of the findings of the survey to try to improve the food service program at the high school, because we very much want them not to use up their reserve, because then they would be in a situation of needing to pull money out of the general fund. So I wish them I think this is a great thing that we now have an intern, and I certainly wish them the best. Couple more things. I wanted to congratulate and give a good luck cheer to our high school team going to the National Ocean Sciences Bowl. They're going to the national competition. That is an extremely high level of competition that they have gotten into. And also our Albany High School Science Olympiad team won regionals earlier this month and is now progressing to state finals. And that deserves a shout out too. Let me see. Lastly, you probably noticed in the personnel assignment order that we have a lot of teachers listed that are retiring this year, and I just wanted to acknowledge those teachers, and hopefully we can maybe have a little presentation or something here at the final board meeting of the school year so that we can give them all our congratulations and best wishes. And with that, would anyone like to move to approve the consent calendar?
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Two. And that brings us to our board and superintendent reports.
Thank you, President Trutain, members of the board. I want to let folks know again that the Rally for Public Education is on April 3rd at the Capitol Mall in Sacramento from 12 to 1:30 p.m. This is sponsored by the East Bay Coalition for Public Education, which are 18 superintendents, board presidents, and our union presidents from across all 18 districts and the County Office of Ed who are planning this rally. to get our legislators and the governor to support public education. And so I want to show you a very short video that Kim Tate and I participated in, and hopefully we'll have some sound. There's no sound. Is there a way that we can kind of put it on the computer and behold the portable mic to it? It's not
Give
working.
me one moment. It was working earlier.
So while she's working on what this is at the end of the planning rally the planning meeting that we had a few weeks ago, we were asked to stand in front of a camera and say something within just a few seconds of why we think educational funding is important. And then they took some of these snippets and put it together in this video that it's actually on the county website. But Kim Tate is quoted a couple times. In fact, she's at the beginning and then, of course, at the end. And let's see if we can. So, and while you're doing that, just so you know, we decided to give our high school students an opportunity to attend this rally as an educational experience in the democratic process. And so we are hoping to take about 30 or so students and their teacher chaperones to this rally. So there'll be some permission slips going out. So it's already been announced to the students. And Michaela Weinstein is going to be our student board member speaker at the rally. She'll be one of two speakers. I think Alameda is the other student speaker.
There's two other student speakers as well that I'll be presenting with.
Oh, there we go.
I believe we need more funding in public education in California because our students deserve it.
The way we invest in students, teachers, and classify in public education now is the future we will have tomorrow.
Without teachers, counselors, aides, and librarians, our kids cannot learn.
Without education today, our tomorrows don't matter. Each child deserves an open opportunity to become.
Students and educators deserve equity in our services and resources, regardless of geography.
Our students deserve the highest quality education taught by the most highly trained teachers, and it's time we put our students first and not 41st.
We can do better.
So this is open to the public, so anybody that would like to attend the rally. Assemblymember Murasuchi, who is the author of AB 39, is going to be one of the guest speakers, and we're hoping that Tony Thurman will also be a guest speaker. And that's my report.
Thank you.
You guys did great.
Oh, I'm so embarrassed about it. Board members, are there any updates?
Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple things real quick. I wanted to give a big shout out to all the performers at Cornell's Got Talent, which was hosted at Ocean View this weekend, and all of the parents who helped out to make it a great event. I also wanted to acknowledge the AMS wrestling team again. They just finished their season last Saturday. They had the league tournament there, and actually, I need to rephrase that. The boys are done, but the girls had the state championship this weekend out in San Rafael.
Ooh.
So I wanted to just give a big shout out to all of the wrestlers and all the parents who made that event successful. And then also, I'm sure some of the other board members might have received some emails about this, and it had come up before at other board meetings, but there's a discussion about ways to improve the Albany Aquatic Center, and there is going to be a meeting. It's the pool committee's meeting, and I don't know if it's always open to the public, but this time it is, and it's at the high school on April 3rd from 5 to 7 in room M3. So people are going to have a chance to give some ideas on how to improve the pool. And I believe there might be a tour for the pool for people who haven't been there before. But I just wanted to let people know about that.
Okay, thank you. Student board member reports.
Albany High School celebrates Diversity Week with the Diversity Assembly and Language Poster Contest. Shout out to the Spanish, Mandarin, French, and dance teachers for helping out with this event. Students are invited to attend the Alameda County Education Rally on April 3rd in Sacramento. Thank you to the Thai restaurant Boa Long for hosting a fundraiser every Tuesday and Wednesday of March to benefit the swim team. Middle schoolers will be showing off their moves at the Purple Rain-themed school dance on Friday, March 29th. Clubs such as Earth Team, Technology Club, and Best Buddies are meeting at the middle school this week. Tomorrow, not tomorrow, Thursday, March 28th will be Vine/Meme Spirit Day, where students will represent their favorite social media trends.
Okay, so there's a few for the elementary schools. At Ocean View, students and faculty will be celebrating Earth Day at an assembly on April 17th. Jacob mentioned Cornell's Got Talent, which was a successful event. And at Marin, the Marin Moonlight Auction will be held on March 30th from 6 to 10. There'll be live music, good food, and a variety of items that will be auctioned off. And then Family Math Night at Marin will take place at 6:15 on April 3rd.
Thank you so much. I also wanted to mention that last week, the Western Association of Schools and Colleges did their extensive visit at Albany High School. And they spent several days visiting every class that the high school offers and speaking to students and staff. I think that we will get their report, their final report later in the year. But WASC is the accreditation agency for high schools, and they will be able to give us an accreditation for either a short number of years or a long number of years. We'll have to see what their decision is, but given the incredible way that the staff and students prepared for their visit, I'm expecting an extended accreditation. Brian.
Really quick, we had a donation from Salesforce of a number of emergency kits. There was a previous board meeting where we spoke about being short on some of those kits, so I just reached out to my network, and Salesforce donated, I think it was between 150 to 200 emergency preparedness kits, and I'm going to reach out to them to see if we can get a few more, just to make sure that we have as many as we need for everybody.
Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to persons to address the board on matters not on the agenda. Anyone would like to step forward? Not seeing anyone. But
Just very quickly, I'm waiting for the answer on the text because I wanted to be able to present her name, but you mentioned the middle school wrestling team. You guys know that you also have a national wrestling champion from the high school, and I didn't know if you guys knew that. I can't remember her name. She's one of my teacher's daughters, but I can't remember her name, and I was asking what weight class she wrestled in. So they just came back from Oklahoma. Last year, I think she was second or third, and this year she came in as a champion.
That's amazing. Thank you, Terry, for letting us know that. I think that we're having a bit of a problem getting all of our incredible student results communicated out to the community because we need to put that on our website, on the front page, you know, the middle school and the high school results. Now, we're going to move to review and action. Business Services would like to present the audit reports from bond measures B and E.
Thank you. I turn this over to our Chief Business Official, Jackie Kim.
Okay, thank you. This item is to approve and accept 2017-18 bond measure B and E financial and performance audit reports. The district has received clean opinion with no findings. And Sarah Filler is here this evening to present and answer any questions you may have.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to be here today to present the 3 audit reports for Measure E 2008, Measure E 2016, and Measure B 2016. So I just wanted to start by kind of giving a little bit of an overview of the opinions that we issue. We issued a financial audit opinion and a performance audit opinion over each of those bond measures. So our financial opinion is regarding the fair presentation of the financials for each of the bond measures. Our performance audit is looking at stated criteria that we're required to test and making sure that the district is in compliance with those performance requirements for each of the bond measures. And to reach our financial audit opinion, a few procedures that we perform to reach that opinion. We test the cash balance, which largely is testing the cash and county treasury balance at June 30th. We also test accounts receivable, which typically is the interest receivable at the end of the year. We also extensively test expenditures. That is an area that we test for the financial audit as well as the performance audit. And for revenue testing, this typically is interest revenue that the bonds are earning. And so the results of our financial audit for each of the bond measures, we issued an unmodified opinion for each of the bond measures. That's the most favorable opinion that can be issued, also known as a clean opinion. There were no significant deficiencies nor any significant any material weaknesses for each of the bond measures. And for our financial audit, we also did not note any audit findings for the year ended June 30, 2018 for each of the bond measures. And for our performance audit, I wanted to go through a few of the procedures that we performed for each of the bond measures. So for Measure E 2008, we test, as I mentioned before, we extensively test expenditures for both the financial audit and the performance audit. And the purpose of the expenditure testing for the performance audit is we are making sure that each of the expenditures we test is properly approved, properly supported by supporting documentation, and that it is in line with the ballot language that has been approved by the voters. And so for Measure E 2008, we tested $38,000 of expenditures, which equated to about 69% of the total expenditures for the year. For Measure E 2016, we tested over $510,000, which was 75% of the expenditures for the year. And for Measure B 2016, we tested $3.7 million of expenditures, which was 76% of the total expenditures. Also required as part of our performance audit, we would test any personnel expenditures, any salaries or benefits that are charged to any of the bond measures. And the district does not charge any expenditures, any personnel-related expenditures to any of the bond measures. For the site walk, this is one of my favorite procedures that we perform. We actually get to get out of, the district office, get out of the office, and actually go to the school sites and view some of the projects. And so this is one of our favorite areas to test. So for Measure E 2008, we did not perform a site walk, as the costs for the year were very minimal and tended to be some soft costs. For Measure E 2016 and for Measure B 2016, we were lucky enough to tour the Albany Middle School Annex building, and were extensively toured on that building as much as we could. We also test contracting and bidding procedures, as well as change orders for each of the measures. For Measure E 2008, there were no contracts awarded during the year under audit. For Measure E 2016, we tested the contract and bidding procedures, and also one change order for the Albany Middle School Annex project. And for Measure B 2016, we tested the bidding procedures and one change order for the Albany High School addition project. And as a result of those procedures that we performed, as well as additional procedures as part of our performance audit, we issued an unmodified opinion over the performance audit for each of the bond measures. Again, no significant deficiencies nor any material weaknesses, and we did not note any audit findings. And as part of our audit as well, if there were prior year audit findings, so findings reported in the year prior to our audit, we are required to review those issues again during the audit and see if those items have been corrected. And there were no findings in the previous year that we need to provide a follow-up on. And so as part of our audit, we're always very helpful to staff and management that assist us during our bond audit process. We work with the business office. We also work with the facilities department. So I'd like to extend a thank you to them for their assistance and transparency during the audit process. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I'd just like to thank you for explaining all of your findings so clearly. We appreciate that. And also like to thank Jackie. I think she's moved from being on the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee to being our Chief Business Officer. And we've had to find a replacement for you on the committee, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
I have just a quick question for you.
Sure.
Do you have any recommendations for how, I know the district has been trying to get a representative from a taxpayer association that needs to be part of the oversight committee. Does your company have any recommendations, or have you seen how that's done in other school districts?
Yeah, and that is one representation that I have found in some of our other districts that can be difficult to fill. And so what we look for as the auditors is that the district is making an effort towards filling that representation. And so what we found that our districts have had success in filling that position is reaching out to local taxpayer organizations and asking if they have any members that would be interested in filling that position. So that's what my recommendation would be.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. Is anyone ready to move that we accept the 2017-18 bond measures B&E financial and performance audits reports? You can just say so moved if you want to.
So moved.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now we move to the independent contractor services agreement with DCA for elementary temporary housing modifications.
This item is to review and approve the independent contract agreement with DCA for, elementary housing project at Albany High School. And this will take from this summer all the way to next January. And the finance information will be bond measure B, about $89,000.
So this item is to place we're going to be placing 3 portables at Albany High School.
That will hold 1 grade at the high school, right? The other 2 grades will be in the...
I think it'll hold 1 grade at the three portables.
3 classrooms, so whichever.
Right. So,
Yeah. We're planning right now on it being 5th grade.
Okay, I know that a lot of work has been done on this by our staff, coordinating with the city and checking for easements and knowing what's under the ground and figuring out exactly the best place to place these portables so that we maintain the fire lane and all this other, all the spacing that they need and the ramps that they need for ADA compliance. So it sometimes doesn't show in what we see, how much has gone into this. But I am certainly happy to support DVC's contract for finishing this work to make sure this can happen.
Does this have any effect on the kind of surrounding area as far as like accessibility or anything like that for the community or anything like that?
I don't think so. Originally, we were going to try to get the portables on the pool side, but there were 2 major easements. One was for East Bay Mud, and one was the city. So the agreement was to move into the other side. So there's still, place for people to walk. And I really appreciate the city being very flexible with that, because the property line for the city actually extends 10 feet into that area. And so they are going to lease us that area for $1 a year for 5 years. So it's a really wonderful partnership that the city has had with us.
Couldn't get them to waive that dollar, huh? we got budget issues.
I think, I think it's been it's been a very nice partnership and sign of the great cooperation between the school district and the city to bring this together. And so with that, I'd like to move that we accept this contract for temporary housing modifications at Albany High School.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Now we move to the next contract with CVA Architects for design of a replacement fire alarm system.
Right. This item is to approve the design for the replacement of fire alarm system at Albany High School. So our Albany High School fire alarm failed. The panel failed. So currently we have placed some replacement for temporarily. However, we will have to replace the whole system. And this is one of the requirements that we will have to provide the design of the panel and the alarm system to DSA, the state. And this will cost about $122,000 in bond Measure B.
Thank you, Ms. Kim. I wonder if you can give us sort of an overview about what's being done now to make sure that the campus is safe from fire and what system we're using to bridge us to this replacement.
Sure. So we had this panel for 20 years, I believe, and it's called Simplex. And this has to be really complicated and high-end system. And when that didn't work, when it failed, we will have to fix temporarily. And meanwhile, we are having 24-hour fire watch. And also, we are working with the fire marshal inspectors that everything is under the compliance, and we are trying to make sure that, for example, the storage boxes are moved out of all the ways, and make sure that we check the sprinkling systems as well as
boxes.
Right. So we are, our staff is do 24-hour fire watch at the moment. And not only the staff, but we hire a 24-hour company. So we have a 2-person. One is our staff, one is another company who is doing those jobs when the students are present during the daytime, since Albany High School is in the big square footage.
So we were able to, the company was able to find a part to replace, so that right now the system is working, but we don't know how long that part will last, just like any of the other parts. And because the manufacturer doesn't make that part anymore, they've had to find parts from other places. So for example, if a school was being rebuilt and they had that part as they were tearing down the school, they might save those parts. We are looking at sort of an intermediate temporary system, and we've got Juan Bros and his team looking at that. So the reason why we have to keep the fire watches, the fire marshal will not release the fire watch until they are absolutely sure that not only does the system work, which is the sound, the strobe lights, but that they are going to inspect every single box that has those lights and sound in every single room at the high school. And so once they know that that is there and they feel confident, then they will lift the fire watch. But until then, we need to keep them in place.
And at what cost is that?
It's only about 900.
Right, about 900 something a day.
Day.
Right.
And I know you're going to do the testing during the vacation time, for the spring.
Yes, so that we don't disrupt staff, and students are going to do it during the spring break.
So we're looking at how many days, Ms. Kim, and approximately how much in total then? If it's 900 a day, how many?
So let's say about 1,000 a day, and we had it about 20 days so far. And we are going to have another month, I believe. So, right.
That's a lot of money.
Right.
Yeah, so that's about $50,000 for someone to walk around and make sure that there's not a fire on campus.
Hopefully, we can work. So, this week, the fire marshal will come to the high school and they will do another inspection. So hopefully we can release them as well, the fire watch. But that is something that if our temporary system is really working well, because that's what they're going to check next week. Right? Next week. So hopefully, but plan for to have the temporary replacement, or the replacement is going to be about a month. Because we will have to go through the bid procedures.
So the company that originally installed the fire system, we're obviously not working with them anymore, but kind of what's their responsibility? Because the system hasn't been in there. I mean, there's other fire systems in other schools and other locations that have been working fine for much longer. So I'm just wondering what the responsibility is from the company that originally installed it. And so, like, is there a warranty? Do they have to replace it? Can we bill them for the money that we have to spend right now? It seems like they should have some responsibility.
We would have to check the warranty, but because the system is 20 years old, I couldn't guarantee it, but I would suspect that the warranty is probably not in effect anymore, but we can double check that just to verify. You know, they don't make the parts anymore. I think that was one of the reasons why we're moving away from this particular company is it's a proprietary company. So whatever we put in its place, and by the way, the new wing that's going to be for the high school will not have this company. We will be using another company where it's easier to get parts from different places. So it's not going to be a proprietary company. But we can check on the warranty.
I mean, it just seems like they don't make the part anymore. That's an inconvenience for the customer. So your part's not working, but you don't make the part anymore. So you should be responsible for that. If there's a part, there's actually a part currently on my car that is not working. And so when I took it to the warranty, because I've had the car too long, so that warranty is done, but there's an actual warranty on that part. So then what happens is that company pays for you to replace the part, and they pay for your labor, which would be the $20,000 that we already spent for somebody to have to come do fire watch because their part is faulty. So I just want to make sure that we check every box, because we won't really have extra money to spend because this company did a terrible job.
We can definitely look, I think we'll ask the question not just on the system itself, but on the individual part.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so I believe that this particular item is paying for an architect to make the drawings necessary for the replacement of the high school fire alarm system with a brand-new system. So I think that our project manager, DCA Architects, determined that this replacement was going to require a submission to the state architect's office, so there have to be drawings created. So do we want to have any discussion about that? I think this is a necessary step, although I feel it's very unfortunate that we're going to have to use bond funds to replace a fire alarm system in our existing school that it was certainly not a planned expense at this point. But I don't see anything around any way around it. I do think that it's possible that we might be able to get some reimbursement money, but that depends on another state agency.
We will be applying for what is called an OPSC hardship grant, and that's the Office of Public School Construction. And so Juan Brosa has a person on his staff who has done a couple of these, and so we will be applying for that. So if we get that hardship grant, it would depend on the percentage that we would get. They could pay 60%, they could pay 40%, they could pay nothing. But whatever that they would pay, then we would put back into the bond fund.
But this is just for the design, right? So So we're paying $120,000 for the design?
That is correct.
I'm in the wrong business. $120,000 for a picture. That's the cheapest way to do it. We
Yes.
don't have any architects that are parents in the district that could draw this up for us for less?
You know, Juan went through it. They put out different, they reached out to different people that do this work, specifically do this, and this is one that he's recommending. I think there was a range of more expensive. So this is, I think it's the, it's for SBA to do the actual designing of the replacement fire alarm system, which I guess is pretty involved. And then, of course, the submission to DSA, if there's any questions. And I'm trying to remember if he said this was what they call an over-the-counter.
I'm just worried because every time you dip into the bond funds, that's less money for the schools that we're trying to build, and we've already sacrificed so much to try and get these schools built. If they're not built, then we can't go back in the past and apologize to the kids that we have already put in an unfair situation. So the least we can do is make sure we get these schools built. And every time you dip into the pot, it's one less thing. So I'm just want to make sure that we check every box to make sure that if we have to spend it, that we have to spend it, that we have to spend that amount. Is there a way to spend less? Then we got to try and figure it out. $120,000 just feels like too much. I'm only one board member, but that seems like a lot.
It does seem like this might have been the low bid.
There are 4 companies who give us a price, and this was one of the best ones we have.
Yeah, this is page 139, and it says that the bids for this ranged from $120,000 to $195,000. Oh, and I know that we have worked with SVA. They were the bridging architect for the Ocean View rebuild. So they're a known entity for the district.
I mean, it also seems like it's costing us every day that we don't start this project, so it's unfortunate, but it seems like we need to move forward so that we can get the system replaced.
If something else does come up, another solution, we could save the $1.1 million. I think this was potentially. Okay. Sarah, that sounded close to a motion to me.
I'll move that we accept the independent contractor agreement with SVA for the fire alarm design.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Okay. Ms. Shin, did you record that vote?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. And that brings us to our last action item, which is the process for determining the stakeholder panel for superintendent finalist interviews. Okay. And that is on page 151 of the board backup. And I'll introduce that item. So in addition to the board members interviewing the superintendent finalist candidates, we want to have a stakeholder panel that would also participate in the interviews. The stakeholder panel will will note the strengths and the challenges of each individual finalist candidate, and that information will come back to the board and help us make our final choice. The search firm that we've hired, McPherson and Jacobson, has suggested that we use a panel of 15, including 2 administrators, 2 classified employee representatives chosen by CSEA and SEIU, 3 teachers, an Albany High School student, usually one of the student board members, and then 7 community members. So what this item is about is for us to decide how we would like those members to be chosen. We have to decide about the community members, but also I would say that the administrators are actually also an issue. Would the board like to issue specific invitations to some of the folks at the district office and to the group of site administrators? Or do we want to just ask the group as a whole if anyone would like to volunteer? And, and then if they do, if we get more than one volunteer, how would we then choose? So there's a few items here that we need to work out. Then I open it up for discussion.
Okay, if we could talk maybe first about the community members and the suggested, is that all right?
Sure.
The suggested 7 numbers of members on that. And in looking at how many groups were actually, if this is the correct amount that were actually discussed with the consultants already, we're looking at basically 9 groups, different community groups. And I'm wondering if we need to push this back to 7 so that the maximum number will be 15. I'm sure that within these groups, you'd have community members that could represent two, in terms of viewpoints. For example, you might have a parent from the Jewish Parent Advisory Group that also has a child in special education and has that perspective as well. So I was thinking that as opposed to us deciding that if we could go back to these groups and have them select a representative with the caveat that if they could look to see if their representative could represent 2 groups at the same time. And I think of all those groups, we should be able to whittle it down to 7 as opposed to 9.
Okay, actually, when I count up, I think I get like 18. But,
I'm looking at the community.
9 bullets, but there's some of the bullets.
Right, so one of those bullets is 4 different PTAs, and the fundraising organizations that comprises 1, 2, 3, 4,
I was thinking that they would,
6.
that the PTAs, for example, would have 1 representative in general, and that the fundraising organizations would have 1 representative. But that is not how we're looking at it then. If it's 18, what if we could still ask the groups the same thing?
This list was just for reference about who the meetings were with. It's not a proposal necessarily.
Right, but I'm saying that if these are in fact representative groups from the community, that this is certainly, if not a final, it's certainly a starting point for identifying all the different interest groups, I guess, if that's how you want to say it. And certainly, it seems that these people should all be represented, that these organizations or groups should be represented. But I personally feel that the recommendation of who would represent them should not come from us, as is one of the proposals, that we would recommend people within us, but rather have those groups decide who would be a representative for them.
I see what you mean. I think there's a lot of wisdom there. Let me see if there's other board opinions about how we could do this.
I like the idea of the community members, picking and then have an opportunity to represent themselves. For the administrators and for the staff, I'd like to issue the invitations to the staff. I would prefer that versus for them to submit to who would want to be on.
Okay. Let me see. Sarah, you
I
want to?
mean, as opposed to having the unions pick the representatives?
No, just for the top one where it was. You can scroll up a little bit here.
Two administrators.
For the two administrators, one from the district office and one site administrator, I just would like to discuss and then issue invitations for those two. The rest of them, I don't have a preference.
I also like the idea of letting for the community groups, letting those groups nominate people. I think we might end up with more than 7 nominations, so I think we'd still need to figure out how we navigate that. I also think there are parents who aren't part of these groups, and I'm especially interested in hearing from people who aren't sort of part of the structure already. I don't know how we go about doing that except by asking the public to essentially apply or nominate themselves. I don't think we'd be overwhelmed with nominees, judging from earlier rounds of trying to get people to participate. But I do think it's important for us to have an opportunity to hear from people who we don't hear from, particularly in something like this, where we have had these community engagement meetings. So I'd like to figure out a mechanism for doing that.
Okay.
That kind of goes with my thought process behind issuing the invitations for the top 2. It would be my goal to issue those invitations to individuals that we don't hear from as often. So that's kind of
For the administrators.
right. And so if if it's open and then everybody can just, submit, well, I want to be on there or I want to be, then most likely you'll get the people that you hear from often versus the people who are also affected by the decision that we're all going to make, but you just don't hear from as often.
I mean, the other issue is that these are for a very, very specific time period. So people's availability for that 2 days is going to narrow our pool significantly because it's a Sunday and Monday.
Yeah.
Can you remind us of what those times are?
The dates, yes. The times, no. So the dates are May 5th and 6th, as you said, Sunday and Monday. And when exactly the stakeholder panel would be interviewing candidates, I'm not sure of that yet. I think the interview schedule depends somewhat on how many finalist candidates we end up bringing in. So that has not yet been set. It would take somebody that would have some flexibility in their schedule to be able to commit. I think this is an open session item, and so regarding the administrators, one from the district office and one site administrator, we could issue an invitation and then leave it to open session on April 16th for us to select that administrator if there's more than one that comes forward from each of those groups. But otherwise, I think we would have to choose the position, we would have to choose exactly who we would be issuing the invitation to, sort of by position name, tonight in open session. So, Vice President Doss, are you comfortable with us putting out the invitation and then deciding among the candidates if we get more than one? Okay.
You mean, am I comfortable saying the people that I would like to have on the panel? If that's your question, I'm absolutely okay with that.
That wasn't quite my
Okay.
question, but yeah, I mean, so I'm sort of asking the board, does the board want to go there to actually name the positions that we want to invite onto the stakeholder panel? And if we do it that way, and if they can't commit for May 5th and 6th, then that leaves us that leaves us a step behind. I think that it just in terms of logistics, it might be a bit safer if we ask first who could make it, and then the board reserves the choice at our next open session.
I kind of like that because we really don't know the schedule of the administrators, both at the district office and at the school sites, and they may have some real heavy commitments already to certain things, be it training or whatever else may be going on at their schools, and they may prefer not to participate. So it may eliminate automatically some people, and therefore those that will step forward would be those that are definitely available for those 2 days, so that it sort of makes our job easier.
Yeah, I see that. Okay, and then for Clementina, you were talking about sort of issuing an open invitation to all of the different stakeholder groups and asking them to please keep in mind people that might have dual enrollment. And then we would hopefully get I don't think we'll get a flood, but if we did then have to choose, we could focus on people who had who represented various subgroups. Sarah, I don't know how we can make it even more open. I guess we could put something out on the website that would ask for sort of a member at large, and see if we could get anyone that way.
I mean, I think you can just have a publicize that we're asking people to nominate themselves or apply to be a member of the stakeholder committee. And part of that nomination is to identify if they belong to any existing stakeholder groups. I'm just hesitant to say this is the universe of people whose input we want, because we have thousands of families in this community who aren't necessarily affiliated with the groups.
I see. So you're thinking that maybe we would put out an email to our entire email list saying that we're trying to form this stakeholder panel, and as part of people's responses, they would identify themselves if they did have affiliations.
Yeah, I mean, my guess is that partly because we don't tend to get flooded with volunteers, and partly because this is such a tiny time window, we'll be lucky to get 7 nominations, but I would prefer not to send the message that we don't want input from people who aren't already part of an established organization.
Great. We have a speaker from the community.
A small question. If you do approach this as an invitation to groups, for some of those groups, you might have a specific listserv or something and a point person that you can say, please pass it on to your groups. There is no such thing, as far as I know, for the special education parents. So that invitation would be completely lost. And if people are lucky to get it, good. If not, then there goes that. So just to keep that in mind. And I imagine that might be also true for other groups that may or may not be listed here.
Do you know, Ms.
Thank you.
Do you know, Ms. Trutain, when the consultants met last week with the different groups, if there were representatives of special education parents, how many were at that meeting?
4.
There were 4.
Yeah, there were 4 parents at that meeting. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we will send out an email and post onto the website that we're looking for these stakeholder panelists with as much information as possible about what the actual commitment is. I'll check with our consultants to see if we can nail down a time frame, at least maybe a window of the time. And then we'll have an item at our next meeting where if we receive more than 7, we'll have to make choices then in open session at the next meeting. community speaker?
Yeah, I apologize. This is Terry Georgeson, principal at Ocean View. In your discussion, and I just have maybe a clarifying question, in your discussion around picking 2 administrators, is it my understanding, Mr. Doss, that you have the name of a particular administrator that you want to ask?
Yes.
Okay. Might I suggest, in the effort of, particularly for administrators, in being mindful to our role as leaders, that perhaps you might consider maybe giving us a list of considerations and allow us as a team to pick a representative. So if part of your recommendation would be to offer someone who perhaps hasn't been on committees or hasn't been a voice, or we want to offer someone new on the administrative team an opportunity. If you can give us suggestions such as that, you would be sending a message to your administrative team that you respect their ability to make a decision. I, for one, would feel uncomfortable if I was, I'll call it cherry-picked, out of my team to say the board wants me on that team. I don't think that would be the intent, but I would worry that that would be the message received. There's no other group here that I'm hearing you say that you want to directly pick an individual to be on that. So you might consider, again, thinking about what would be your parameters, what would be the type or the qualifications of the individual, and allow our team to work with it, because we might be able to find ways to support that person in their duties and help give them the opportunity and relieve them of some of their responsibilities so they could become available.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh. Okay. So I think I'm hearing our direction, which is the announcement on the website and through email with as much detail as possible, and then we'll see who we get from that. Then is the board comfortable with us sending by email a request to the district office staff and a separate email to the site staff asking them to suggest an administrator? Or
Suggest an administrator based on a list that we provide?
no, that would, it would, so I.
Or just make sure I say this right. I don't want it to come across the wrong way because I'm a really nice guy. But pretty much not do what I asked and just let them pick the person. Is that what we're doing?
That's what I just said. So that's what's up for debate now. It seemed to me like that, that is the process that was used for Albany's Teachers Association. So that we let them know that we needed 3 teachers for the stakeholder panel, and then they came back to us with who they had chosen and who agreed to to be available on the dates and times. So it sort of rang a bell. It seemed like that was a similar process. And also that's what we're planning to do with CSEA and SEIU. So it just seemed...
So one of the most important decisions that we're going to make as board members, which is the superintendent of the schools. Mm-hmm. We're going to base that decision on administrators that are available that aren't already too busy, and people who are available on Cinco de Mayo weekend and the following Monday.
Well, no, we're going to have the main responsibility in our interviews with all of the finalists. So we will interview them all personally and extensively, and then we will get also input from the stakeholder panel. So this is one piece, and the stakeholder panel is 15 members. So this is one piece of the input that we will get, and then we 5 will make the final decision.
Okay. They don't get to decide. We decide.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But I mean, being on the panel is an important part of the process. I mean, that's why you have 2 administrators, 2 classified, 3 teachers. You know, I mean, that's why you have all, you know, this input. I mean, because it's a really important part of the process. We get an opportunity to see how these finalists are going to interact with all members of the community.
We don't get to see them do that interview, right?
No.
What do you mean?
They interview the candidates separately from us.
Yes.
And maybe one other point is whoever that administrator is just one voice of a group of 15 people.
It's a large voice, though, because every time the administrators get on that microphone and say something, you guys go right along with what they say. So it's a huge voice. So it's important that we pick who that person is strategically, carefully, and mindfully.
Well, but do you feel that maybe we could at least get nominees from themselves first?
That's
Let
fine.
the administrators say, you know, I'm really not interested, or, you know, for whatever reason, right? And that only those that are interested would put forward their name to be considered.
Well, that's fine. That's what Terry said. It makes sense. So, I mean, that's fine.
Okay.
So,
Boardroom clock? Oh.
did you want to say something?
Go ahead.
The site administrator plan makes sense to me. We have 5 principals. I think personally, I'd be in favor of allowing them to choose who they want to represent them. How would that work in the district office? Does the district staff, I'm looking at the 2 of you who are here, feel that makes sense for your role as well? And I assume the superintendent would not be involved in choosing that. Okay.
The superintendent will not be involved in any part of this process.
Okay.
So also, I think Ms. Shen might have an opinion about that.
Oh, sorry. I'm just always looking this way. Sorry.
Did you want to speak to how the district's office might feel about choosing a representative for the stakeholder panel?
We could suggest executive cabinet. We could agendize this at executive cabinet, and they could do the same, maybe nominate one person to be part of it. That's one idea.
Ms. Kim, do you have anything to add?
No, I think we will discuss, and we have a pretty good team that we can.
Okay. Trustee Clark?
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly say when we had the elections for the board members up here, I said back then that I would back Brian, and his request is something that he asked for. I don't see it as being any different than a city council member appointing somebody to a committee. The person might not be able to do it, but I don't really have a problem with him saying for a particular group of folks that there's somebody he prefers. So I don't know if everybody else got a chance to weigh in, but he made a pretty specific request, and I will back him up with that.
I just want to point out, so it seems to me that the stakeholder interviews are for the stakeholders to give their input. If one or more of the members of that stakeholder group are, to use your word, cherry-picked by the board, it would appear that the board is putting its thumb on the scale of what the result and feedback is. So I would suggest that you let the different stakeholder groups decide who they send as their representative, and whoever it is, it's their choice.
Yeah, I'd also like to add on to that. I think that it would definitely be the best idea to let the administrators choose between themselves who's going to represent them. And the reason that I say that, there's 2 reasons. The first one is when we were having issues with having middle schoolers and elementary schoolers, middle school teachers and elementary school teachers, and even some high school teachers feeling like there was some competition in the district. I think that the administrators did a really wonderful job of bridging together the entire district and really focusing on unity. And I was really surprised by that, and also really impressed by that. I guess I wasn't surprised, but I was really impressed by that, and I don't want to see that unity between the administrators go. And so I think that if Ms. Georgeson was describing that there would be this discomfort with one of the administrators being cherry-picked, then I think that we should acknowledge that and know that they're speaking and saying that there would be that discomfort, and because of that, I think that we should let them choose between themselves who it is going to be rather than cherry-pick it ourselves.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so it looks like we're going to have two separate decisions here. I think that we agree on the process for choosing the 7 community members. So that would be the email to the community, the posting on the website, then we'll see who we get, who self-nominates, and we'll choose those 7 in open session at the next meeting. And then I need to hear a motion on the administrators.
Okay, I still wanted a clarification on these formal groups. There are a number of formal groups here that meet, and I wanted to just clarify, we are not directing a process for them. In other words, if they wanted to do it over the phone with each other, to get a representative from their group, that is fine with us. Or if they want to have a meeting to discuss the issue, that is okay. We are not going to tell them how. We just simply want to know who at the end of the day.
I think that if we use the process that I just described, people would be self-nominating themselves and then identifying themselves as affiliated with certain groups. So we would not be asking the group to put forward a candidate. This would just be a general plea to the community.
So we're really not asking for a representative from each of these groups. We are just putting it out there then to everybody in the community, if we're not asking for group representation.
I think it would be difficult to ask for group representation and then have to reject, because of the size of the committee, some of the representatives. So that's why what Sarah said made a great deal of sense to me. If we ask people to nominate themselves and let us know what their affiliations are, we can try to get representation of as many of these different groups as possible, but yet we wouldn't have somebody go to the trouble of having a meeting or even having a series of phone conversations, putting forward a representative, and then us not being able to accept that person because of the limited size of the committee.
Okay, so that goes to my question, though, then. Are we not ultimately going to have representatives from these different groups?
I don't know, because without knowing who applies, and because I think what you said was right. I looked through the list and I thought of several people that I knew that were a member of 2 or 3 or even 4 of those groups. So I think that we can choose people that would would represent that point of view, but may not be a specific representative, not be a chosen representative of that group.
Well, can I suggest one addendum to the process? So when you reached out to these groups about setting up the community engagement meetings, you actually asked them to nominate or to contact you if they had people who were interested in the stakeholder committee. I think if you could follow up with those groups again, and in addition to this large email, and remind them that we would like nominees from all of these groups, they can decide how they do that. So they could say, we're going to let our members nominate themselves, or it would mean a lot to me if the Black Parent Advisory Group, as part of this collection process, said, we would really like this person. That person can put it on their nomination form, or
I could certainly send a reminder email.
That option.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm saying, though, that it's not very clear yet what process we will ultimately decide. And once again, your point is well taken. We may not get a lot of people because of the time element involved with folks working, et cetera. But at the same time, if we would get a larger than 7 number, then we are going to have to make decisions. And I'm kind of already asking on what basis are we going to be making those decisions? Because I think that that might play a role in some people saying, I'm not a member at large. I specifically with this group, and whether we in fact want to see the perspective of and the voices of these specific groups that have been created in the district, certainly for certain reasons, some of these groups, you know. And I would want to see them represented and have a place at the table, right? I mean,
I think
that's why we have them.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I interrupted you. My ideal is we end up with people from all of these bullets. I don't know if we're going to get nominations for all of them. But I think as we advertise this, we can say we are looking for representation from all of these different stakeholders, the broader community, and then do you feel comfortable when we get to the next meeting and we have the people in front of us that then we can?
Sure. Absolutely. But as long as we're clear going out so that they hear what we're saying about our interests in diverse representation.
Okay. Okay, so the posting on the website, the general email, and the reminder email to all of these specific groups. Okay, so that, and then an open session decision if we get more than 7 at the next board meeting. So that's the 7 community members. Now we need to get back to and we need to finish this up so we can move on to the administrators.
Okay. I'm going to make this a little easier on everybody. At least I'm going to attempt to. The administrators can talk amongst themselves and submit names of people who are available to serve. I would like to specifically issue an invitation to 2 people at the district office that I would like to see on this panel, which is my original intention. The site administrators can submit the person. I had some people in mind, but I didn't have like a specific person from the site administrators. I do have 2 specific people from the district office that I'd like to see. And I'm hoping that our current superintendent will give them the time off available to participate.
There's only, the panel was defined as having 1 from the district office?
Yeah, 1.
Okay, but I thought you just said that there was 2.
And then once we issue those 2, maybe one person's available, maybe one person is not. I don't want to like do it and then that person say, oh, I'm not available, and then have to do it again. I just want to invite them both. If they both accept and they both are available, then the board can decide.
So you mean instead of letting the district office staff decide?
Right.
Brian, could you kind of talk a little bit more once again about why you feel that's important for you to do, and as a board member?
Because I feel that if I do that, I can assure that diversity plays a role in the decision. And I just feel myself, my personal feelings, the one way that I can assure that is if I personally issue the invitation. If I leave it into the hands of others, then the decision is in the hands of others, and then they make the decision based on whatever reasons they have. I'm making the decision based on wanting to have as diverse a panel as possible. And so I want to take ownership of that by issuing the invitation.
So would you like to issue those invitations personally? As a board trustee? I mean, you could email these 2 people that you have in mind and ask them personally if they would step up to be a part of the stakeholder panel. It sounds like to me maybe that's what you want to do rather than having a board action being to invite those 2 specific people that you want.
That's fine.
Okay. Okay, so then I think that the site administrators are going to present us with 1 representative, and then the district office is going to present us with 1 representative through their process, and Vice President Doss is going to let a couple of people know that he really wants them to join that panel. Is the board comfortable with that? Okay, so be it.
Do we need a motion?
We do. Okay. That's pretty complicated. Mission, what do you need? As described, can we say that we're going to handle I move that we handle the stakeholder, the determination of the members of the stakeholder panel by the methods previously described.
I second.
May I suggest?
See above.
Approve the process as described, and then in the minutes, I will reflect.
Okay,
And
and
I'll
we
make
have
sure
the
that-
video, we have the video to back it
Yes,
up.
I'll make sure I communicate what I've recorded.
Super, okay. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Yay. That moves us down to our review and discussion items. Superintendent.
Thank you, President Trutane. The purpose of this item is to receive an update on the transitional kindergarten program, as well as the before and after school program during the temporary housing of students at Marin and Cornell, and also for the board to discuss this item. This was requested by one of our board members. I have here today to do a quick presentation, Anna Mansker, who is our director of the Albany Children's Center, and Terry Georgeson, our principal at Ocean View Elementary School. So I turn it over to them, and then we'll open it up for board discussion and questions, and I know there's community comments. So let me turn over to Ms. Mansker.
Thank you. Thank you very much for welcoming me here this evening. And I'm hoping that I can be as informative and succinct as possible. Superintendent Val Williams contacted me a few weeks ago and said that there was interest in learning more about where we stand in terms of Albany Children's Center's before and after school programming in relationship with our temporary housing plans, right? We, as a school district, had made the motion the end of January to move forward with temporary housing, and then in sort of my early childhood world or bubble, I began working with the ACC staff as well as my colleagues, the other school administrators in the district, the various teacher groups, and CSEA employees and unions as well. So I put together a couple of slides to take us through this process. All right. There I am. Thank you. Looks good. All right, and we do have the cutest logo, right? Yeah. That was designed by a 4-year-old when we were thinking about how we were going to represent our Cougar Cubs mascot. Okay, I did the wrong thing.
That's great.
Okay, so in terms of the planning process, we have taken many steps to ensure that we maintain the high-quality programming while we are both adjusting our programs as well as expanding them. The first component was about locating facility space, right? As we moved to have the TK childcare on the ACC campus, we need a room there. We needed to have rooms at Marin and Cornell elementary schools to house our kindergarten childcare programs. When we move, or when the first and second grade Ocean View children and staff and families move over to AMS Annex, we needed to ensure that we had facility space for childcare there, as well as supporting the 3rd through 5th grade Ocean View families. We then needed to secure our enrollment numbers. We know that our child care programming is absolutely tied to the needs of the families in our community, right? So I have a very close relationship with the Student Services Department as they are monitoring the incoming kindergarten enrollment numbers. I am getting feedback from them as well as families who reach out to us directly, so we can ensure that we do have the needs in the community to house these extra and new child care programs. As we grow programs, we also have to increase our Albany Children's Center staff members, and we are currently in negotiations there. I can't say anything more about that because of the fact that we're in negotiations, but please know that we are in the process of being able to hire the necessary staff for the child care programs. We do need to expand food service, right? Because we are going to be expanding our programs. We will be housing lunch time in the TK and kindergarten child care rooms, and so that meant an increased partnership with Sabina, our executive chef in the district. We have been talking a lot, and we will work out all of those details there. Okay, so in terms of maintaining and enhancing our programming, there's some parts that are complete, other pieces that are in progress, right? We know that we can maintain all current school-age child care programming. What that means is the 189 families that are currently at Ocean View Elementary School receiving ACC childcare for before and after school, we know that we have it in place, that we can continue to maintain that continuity of care as we move into the 2019-2020 school year. Right? The pieces that are in progress is really discussing how we're going to expand the current practices to work in new locations for longer hours, right? Bringing in the new staff members, really adjusting and aligning the daily schedules with the various different school site principals and teachers that work there, aligning the curriculum and instruction as well, working with food services to ensure that they're that programming works as well. And I am also collaborating with Albany Unified School District facilities and site principals in terms of setting up these classrooms and spaces. A lot of that is really in progress right now because those classrooms are being used, right, by existing programs for the 18-19 school year. Right? So right now it's all about planning and creating timelines so that when summer begins, we're ready to hit the ground rolling. All right, so this is sort of an overview of what those facility locations look like or are. As I said, at the Albany Children's Center, we will house TK. We have one classroom that will be open from 7:30 until 6. At Cornell Elementary School, for kindergarten, there are 2 rooms available. And then we will be able to maintain that Chinese school program. As I had said in that previous slide, we are able to maintain all of the existing child care programs that we have now and then expand. At Marin, we will have 2 rooms specific for kindergarten, Tupelo, and we will continue to utilize the multi-use room for our 1st through 5th graders. At the Albany Middle School, we will utilize a portable on AMS yard or blacktop space, and that particular portable will be able to house the before school programs for our 1st and 2nd graders. It will also house the after school program. Additionally, in the after school, we will be able to partner with our Ocean View 1st and 2nd grade teams to have additional space in classrooms from 3 until 6 o'clock. In that way, we're able to maintain our Ocean View Chinese school program. Right? I have a little asterisk next to Ocean View Elementary because I know that's where we'll start the school year. Sort of uncertain right now, I think, as a school district, at what point that will shift over to the high school. But right now, when we look at the fall, the 3rd through 5th graders are going to be on the Ocean View campus, which means that the Maples program, as well as the Ocean View Chinese School program, will remain there at the Ocean View campus. Okay, so my hope is that I can kind of take you through the some slides around the website to help navigate the school-age programmings. So this is a screenshot of the Albany Children's Center website, and you can see up at the top that there's a link for enrollment, but then there's a link for each of our programs, such as preschool, TK, and then the various school-age childcare programs that we have. There are things that have been updated to reflect what will happen in the fall, and we know that there will be continuous updates as I'm able to solidify more and more pieces. One part would be the staffing, for example, or specific classroom numbers. I'm going to take you through an example. We can just imagine that we were to click on transitional kindergarten. If you select the Transitional Kindergarten tab and then go down to TK Childcare, you will see this. It shows a program description of the childcare room, as well as a daily schedule of what will happen in that classroom for the children that participate in the full-day TK childcare. If you look at this example, left side, if you were to select transitional kindergarten schedule, that's where you'll see like a program description of what TK looks like, as well as a sample TK schedule, right? Right now what I'm showing you is the childcare version of it. Okay, additionally, and because I think hopefully this will kind of segue us into the topic more specifically around transitional kindergarten and kindergarten, we thought it would be a good idea to take a look at the AUSD website. If you look here, I'm going to hopefully show you where to access some really good resources around TK and kindergarten frequently asked questions. So this is the AUSD website. If you were to select enrollment up at that top bar and then scroll down to enrollment timeline, you will see this. There is, when you look at your computer, it's a dark blue bar on the right side of the screen. If you go to where it says 2019 TK Kindergarten Questions and Answers, there are many questions and answers that were originally taken in from the TKK enrollment night meeting at the end of January that have been posted here. Since then, additional questions and answers have been posted as well. I think we have over 100 at this point, and it's going to be a really good resource for families who have incoming TK and kindergarten children to just be able to continue to go to if any sort of question comes up. Okay, so I think.
And before we turn it over to Terry, the FAQs, we had principals, Anna, and our executive cabinet and I got together for a few hours and went through each of those questions at a couple of different meetings, but most recently, I think it was last week, where we came together for 2 hours and really went through all of the questions. So I think we're up to 106 questions at this point. So I was going to ask, is it ready for Terry?
Yes.
To come up and talk a little bit about what the TKK program, just a draft of what a sample day will look like.
That portable that you was talking about is the one that's already on the middle school campus? I guess last, when they're done, I guess.
All right, what we've got up here is just a general outline for what a TK or K day would look like. Most classes in the early childhood classrooms usually start with a morning meeting or a calendar time, kind of a way of introducing and bringing and welcoming kids into the classroom. The initial read aloud, writing workshop, partner teacher, usually this is a point in which they would join the class. Some of this recognize is once the class is established. When the class is first starting at the very beginning of the year, the teachers are most valuable as a team welcoming those kids into the classroom. So what you see up here, for the most part, with the idea of when teachers work together is based on student needs. And the very beginning of the school year, when students have a hard time entering the room or have a hard time saying goodbye to their folks, having an extra adult in the room has been something we have provided for years, whether it be an aide in the room or specialists who might not be serving students quite yet come in and support. So this is one of the places early in the year where what you see at the very beginning of the day, whether it be the AM or the PM program, the teachers would be together. Once class is established, then this is more of the routine you would see. The students would be used to coming in, they would sit with the teacher, do their kind of quick morning hellos, calendar, read aloud, and then the second teacher would usually come in at that point. They may be coming in and out. It wouldn't necessarily be a solid 90 minutes from beginning to end because there are many variables in that part of the day. So if there are preps during that part, you wouldn't have a team teacher in the classroom during a prep. So during that prep, for the morning teacher, that would be a time when the afternoon teacher would not be scheduled to be in the room to support the students. What you see in other parts with the mini lesson, say 9:15 to 10:15, is probably the time in which the paired teachers are most excited to do work together, because this offers the flexibility to be able to, one, take the time to set up an activity, where in early childhood, in order to do that, you have to be able to develop skills for the rest of the class to be independent while the teacher sets up those activities, or have parent volunteers in the room to set up those activities. Now the team teacher can come in and set up more extensive activities and or more varied activities so that then they can work together. It also allows for a time where there may be some intervention that can be provided. So if you have centers or table activities in math, say for example, it's the easiest one to give an example to, you could have various tables that students go and practice various skills, and the second teacher might be doing some intervention with a group of students during that time, or some extension with some groups of students at that time. So it allows the teachers to kind of, once they get to know what the needs of their kids are, to be able to share that targeted instruction, either for a small group of kids or to bring in varied activities. So that would be the time when you would see the team teachers working together the most. And then with each trimester, there's also assessments. And for kindergarten and TK, all of these assessments are one-on-one with a student. So you have to sit with the student, and they take many times from 30 to 45 minutes per student. So this would be the time of year where, unlike the current program we have, where a teacher, again, creates an independent experience for the other students so that she can assess a student, we're able to continue instruction while one teacher might be doing that assessment. Or outside the student day, where we've had to do it from the past and aftercare, pull kids in later in the day and try to get some of those assessments done. We've even had to create schedules so that teachers can take a day off and come in and do assessments while they have a substitute in the class. And that's what many times our teachers have done at the kindergarten level in order to get all those assessments done. So this allows teachers to do this without having to have substitutes in the class or having to create a schedule where students are doing a lot of independent work. Snack and recess will vary a little bit because at the sites they're going to have to make sure if they're outdoors at any time that they have play space available. So they're going to have to coordinate with their school and with the other recesses to make sure when that happens. But for the morning, we're assuming it would take place somewhere between 10:15 to 10:45 in the morning. Most of the recesses are snack recess, and these snack recesses, generally speaking, last approximately 20 minutes, give or take, depending on how long it takes to get students prepared for a snack. Some of them take the full time to eat, others eat very little and want to play, so you want to make it long enough so that kids have the opportunity, hopefully, to eat and to play. And then we come back to a read aloud or shared reading, choice time towards the end, and then kind of a wrap up at the end of the day. The teachers are really working a lot on this, so this is really more of a sample. They really wanted me to make sure that I emphasize this is not written in stone. Please don't hold them to these times specifically, but to understand the general concept of how they want to work at minimum for those 90 minutes when they work together to get kind of the biggest bang for their buck. This is a similar sample schedule that we had created early on. I think it might have been one that we even showed at the information night, something such as this. It just kind of breaks it out a little bit differently and shows how the morning teacher will support the afternoon teacher, and as well how the afternoon teacher will support the morning teacher. And then I think these were some of the additional questions that I'm not sure if we were going to spend time talking about or just wanted to put them up.
Yeah, I just put them up because these were questions that came from 2 different lists that I received, and this is the list that we had worked on. So with that, I will open up to the board or the community, and we can answer questions as best as we are able.
Board, Vice President Doss, you had a question about the temporary building.
Yeah, the portable that's going to be used at the middle school, is that one that's already there, or is there going to be one placed there?
Yes, thank you. So the portable that Albany Children's Center will utilize, P1, is already on the middle school campus. Currently, the drama teacher is using that particular portable, but when the annex opens up, the drama teacher will move into that drama space, right? And so it frees up that portable. Over the summer, we will work with facilities and I think a moving company to first move the drama stuff out, to clean it up, and to move in the early childhood furniture to make it appropriate for the before and after care.
Yeah.
Board questions or comments?
I'd like to wait till after the parents present.
Okay, community members?
Real quick, sorry. Sure. The portable that you're speaking about, I've been in it. And so they're going to take everything out of there and kind of update it a little bit and make it a little more friendly for younger, a little more kid-friendly for younger students. But you don't know like exactly kind of what's going to go into it.
I have a good sense, okay. At least a starting point. Right now, the Redwoods portable on the Ocean View campus has first grade children in it. Right? So we will box up all of those materials and supplies and furniture and bring that over. What I'm doing the next 2 weeks is I'm having individual meetings with each of the school age before and after care program teachers and staff, and really we're going to sit in, like, I believe it's next Monday, I'm going to be meeting with the Redwoods team. We'll be sitting inside that Redwoods portable talking about what we currently have. We'll put together that timeline in terms of what needs to be boxed up so that it's moved over. And additionally, we have to take into consideration, is there any sort of additional supplies or furniture that might be needed?
Okay.
Okay.
So could I get a show of hands of how many community members want to speak? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. 6. I'd like to keep it to 15 minutes. Can we go with 2 minutes, 30 seconds?
I thought we had allotted a half hour for the parents to speak.
No, that was for the entire item, for the presentation plus the comments and for the board discussion. So please line up. We want to welcome you.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Spice. You all know who I am already. I'm kind of doing an introduction, and then the rest of the kindergarten parents are going to take different points to talk about that we already emailed to the board. So generally, I want to say how I personally feel about this. I feel like I would feel much better about this process if we were going about it a different way, such as the administrators kind of telling us, we know that this is not what's best, because this is not what we have been doing for the past 8 years. This is not what California typically does. 75% of schools are not on this AM/PM schedule, and it's not where we're going according to our governor and the rest of California. I'd feel a little better about it if we were saying that this isn't what's best, but it's what we have to do, versus it kind of being shoved down our throats as this is what's best for your kids, so shut up and don't ask us any questions, which is kind of how I feel like it's been for us so far. We've kind of been pushed aside, not really listened to. Our concerns are not taken very seriously, and we, in general, feel like no one cares what we have to say. They know what they're doing. We should be quiet, trust that they're going to do what's best, and that's it, which is a really hard sell, because if it was what's best, we would have been doing it, and we would already have AM/PM. That's what would be the norm for Albany Unified School District and for the rest of California, but it's not. So that's a hard pill to swallow, that this is what's best, be quiet, we don't really want to hear your input, and we're not going to pay you any attention when you speak or have suggestions or ideas or thoughts, because we know what we're doing. So shut up and sit down, which is how I feel that we have been approached so far. That's my personal feeling about this. Also, sorry, I have notes. The communication so far is one reason why I feel that way. There's just been a lack of communication. The outreach when this process was starting and we were voting on this and the decision was being made was zero. It seemed like the district didn't want to hear from other parents, didn't attempt to reach anyone to let them know that this was happening. When they wanted support and wanted to say, oh, our teachers have agreed to this, then I got several emails saying this is what the teachers agreed to. They think that this is best. But before, when it was time to come up here and say, hey, this is what we're leaning towards and this is what we're suggesting, if you have an opinion about it, there was no communication whatsoever from the administrators or the school district. So that kind of told me that you all didn't want to hear what we had to say until it was too late. Oh, I appreciate the schedules. I'm not going to stop talking because I've been waiting a really long time to talk about this.
No, I'm sorry. We have other people that are waiting to speak.
We're all waiting to speak together, and they have
You've had
agreed.
3 minutes. Thank you very much for speaking. Now, next
I'm going to
speaker.
finish.
We'll have our next
All are
speaker,
fine
please.
with me
We need to
speaking.
have our next speaker. You've had your 3 minutes.
Okay.
Board, I need to ask you, we've allotted.
I think that we'll spend more time than she's going to take arguing about it. I think we should just let her finish like we let everybody else finish.
We've had this happen before at board meetings.
For example,
board meetings go to 1 a.m.
This board meeting isn't going to go until 1 a.m., but every parent that's gotten up there and spoke, when the really nice lady read the letter about her student no longer being in the district, she spoke for 7 minutes. Nobody interrupted her. When that buzzer went off, we pretended like we didn't hear it because we felt like what she was saying is important. What this parent is saying is important.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
So just let her say it.
Okay, but I will say that I don't think any group has ever been taken as seriously as you kindergarten parents.
You're taking up more time.
You'll have your time. There's this incredible depth of research on the website. There's, over 100 questions that have been answered in detail. There have been meetings with principals, meetings with the superintendent, meetings with directors. All of this is because the district takes you so seriously and has tried so diligently to answer your questions and to address your concerns. So please continue, and everyone else, I hope that you can limit your comments to 3 minutes apiece.
Thanks. I'll be at the next board meetings, and I expect that whole spiel every time anybody goes over their 3 minutes. Now, as I was saying, we only have 2.5 months left. We have to make these decisions quickly, which is why we are up here talking about it now and not really willing to wait for the transitional housing team to continue to meet before we say anything about how we feel about this AMPM. I understand that they're meeting and that things take time, but we only have 2.5 months left before it's summer and people are pretty much checking out, going on vacations, the schools are closing, parents have lives as well. So we kind of need to get things going and know what we're going to do with our kids. So that's why we're here and talking about this now. We don't have that much time left. Also, I wanted to speak about the parents being overwhelmed. I have heard that we all know the teachers and administrators have a lot of work to do with temporary housing and that everybody is feeling the burdens of all of this work that they have to do. This is what they asked for. They wanted the schedule. We did not want this schedule. We are also overwhelmed. Don't know how we're going to pay for childcare. Students have to change their schedules now for school, which is 30% of the district that live in the UC Village. They have to now change their school schedules based on this. People have to get second jobs to be able to afford the extra enrichments that we have to give our kids that the school is not providing. We have to pay extra money for childcare. That money is not growing off the tree in our backyard, so we have to work extra hours and work overtime in order to do that. We are also overwhelmed. We also have to go to meetings and write hundreds of emails and ask questions to try to figure out what's best for our kids. So it's not only the administrators, the staff, and the teachers who are overwhelmed by this process. The parents are equally overwhelmed too. We have to take these children home when this is all said and done. We have to deal with these consequences. We have to deal with them getting shortchanged with their kindergarten year forever. It's not a temporary thing for us. This is something that our kids have to live with and that we have to deal with, and we have to make the sacrifices needed in order to make this schedule work for us. So we're also overwhelmed with this process and what we have to do in order to make this work for our families and our lives. Now I'll pass on to the next person. Thanks, Kim.
My name is Sarah Bly, and I will try to make this brief, but I echo Spice in that what I'm asking for right now is that we as kindergarten parents would like a sub-team on the transition team dedicated to kindergarten. We've received some pushback on this, and I want to clarify and explain. First, as Spice said, I think we need to start on the same page here. We did not like this plan. We did not want this plan. We told you this was not the right plan for us. And yet, we got this plan. And we have said to you, we are willing to make the best of it. We are going to pay more money, we are going to have less school, and we will still make the best of it with our own volunteer time and hard work on this sub-team. And we were told, we'll wait for the transition team, which we did. I attended the first transition team meeting a month ago. There were 20 people there, and it was clear from the start that this move is a massive topic with many different issues to tackle. We spent most of the meeting discussing the Ocean View Library, something I believe is important, but also something that very few of us could be helpful in considering. It seemed obvious to have a dedicated group of people who are associated with Ocean View who will be responsible for rallying the resources, communicating and managing the process, spending their precious time in this topic. In the same way, kindergarten parents have our own specific needs and concerns with this massive change. We would like a dedicated committee or sub-team or whatever we want to call it that focuses on these so our efforts are best spent for everybody on this transition team. So we want a subcommittee, and specifically, we would like it from members already on there, ideally 2 to 3 parents, a principal, after-school leader, PTA member, or a TK or kinder teacher. The purpose of the subcommittee, I want to stress, is not to interject ourselves into the details of the kindergarten curriculum or other issues we don't have knowledge on. The time spent on this committee will also not be taking from important details or time that people need to be spending doing other things, because the reality is that the new schedule places enormous demands on both teachers and the after-school program, and our belief is that parental involvement will likely be called on and needed more than ever. The purpose of this subcommittee would be to cooperate towards better results in areas that will benefit from our involvement. One area of specific importance will be after school. Not only improving the offering to meet the needs of the longer schedule, but to creatively problem solve how we get the resources to do so, which were made very clear in the Q&A document are not there. The PTA stood up at the meeting where the decision was made to go to AMPM, and they said they were willing to help. This needs to be coordinated. A committee would facilitate this. Parents have stood up and said they have resources that they can contribute to the after-school environment. This has to be coordinated. The committee could help do that. Multiple parents emailed me today and said, we would love to join you at the meeting tonight, but after reading the document and all of the things that the school has posted, I would like to continue. I've lost all hope that the administration is willing to do anything to alleviate the burden put on kindergarten parents. They answer questions, but they don't engage. Many parents I know are considering private options. They are convinced that nothing will be done. This committee could help them feel heard. This could also help activate them and turn their disappointment into concrete steps to improve the situation. I realize that the staff and administration has a lot on their hands and that time is a very valuable resource, but do not underestimate the power of the collective. Albany is nothing if not a community of able-bodied, creative, and determined individuals. This transition will only work if we come together to pool our resources collectively. This sub-team dedicated to kinder is a step towards that. We as kindergarten parents have accepted a plan that is not best for our children or ourselves, and we have even offered to make the best of it. We expect that you will do the very least and work with us on this.
Thank you.
I would like to thank the board for giving us the opportunity to speak to the specific situation of incoming K and TK students, but I also would like to thank Sarah Bly and Spice Doss for their tireless efforts to keep K and TK parents involved in the planning process of what is going to take place starting next school year for our children. I can't say that I have seen any efforts made by the administration to keep K and TK parents involved, consulted as stakeholders in the transition planning, other than taking questions and making information available. That is not what I consider to be the strategic objective, number 3, mentioned page 155 in the board packet for today, that states all stakeholders will collaborate. So I would like to see the administration seek out more collaboration with parents. My talking point as part of our organized group of K and TK parents today is about schedule. We do not know how the AM/PM schedule will look like compared to the current early bird, late bird. We don't know if there is still the same enrichment or what is being cut in order to compensate for the shorter schedule. We would like to see side-by-side schedules of the early bird, late bird, and AM/PM so we can understand what is changing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. I have 2 children at Marin, and I have another one entering kindergarten in the fall. And one of the things that I think I have a hard time with is waiting until the end of July to find out our school assignment and also our children's, AM versus PM assignment. In my case, I scrambled to get all the paperwork in time for the priority enrollment period, which is the end of March. And so now I have to wait 4 months to find out. And for a lot of families, that really leaves us with only 3 weeks to actually make arrangements for before and after school care. And so it's really not fair to kind of leave at such a last minute. And so my hope is that we can move up the timeline somewhere earlier, say at the end of the school year in mid-June, so that it gives people a lot more runway to make plans. Second thing is an 8:10 a.m. start time is really early. I realize that kids learn best, early in the morning, but it's hard to wake up the kids that early. And I fear that it's not as productive. And so I'm wondering if we could possibly shift back the start time. And I understand people have to make multiple drop-offs. So if 8:10 started at, say, 8:20, and then 8:30 started at 8:35, if everybody kind of shifted back by 10, 15 minutes, I think that might be more practical or doable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Suzanne Wilson, and I'm the parent of 2 children, the eldest of which is an incoming kindergartner this fall. Due to our work schedules, he currently attends preschool in an active learning environment for roughly 8 hours a day. Given that kindergarten and TK will now be 3 hours and 20 minutes, many of our students will spend most of their day in before or after care. Parents are concerned that the loss of the instructional time, which adds up to, I think, roughly 120 to 180 hours over the school year, will impact our students and set them at a disadvantage. Kindergarten has become increasingly more academic over the last decade, and as a community, we should ensure that our students have a strong and equal foundation from which to start their public education compared to those that came before them and to those who are in other school districts. Therefore, we would like to see a dedicated effort to increase the enrichment opportunities in the before and after care program offered through the ACC. Our students deserve to have the opportunities to enhance their reading skills or learn different skill sets in the arts or physical fitness activities like gymnastics or different languages. This would also put Albany Unified Kinder and TK students on a level playing field with neighboring school districts, and it could possibly help retain enrollment for those who may think about leaving. We realize that this this ask has costs associated with it. However, as some have mentioned, kindergarten and TK families are also shouldering an additional financial burden as we require additional childcare. Perhaps the PTA, as mentioned, could offer some support for financial assistance to help either augment the costs or to make enrichment opportunities available to more students who might not otherwise have the opportunity. We're willing to work with the PTA and find out how they operate and if those opportunities are available. Thanks for your time and for your staff's time as well.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maya Hazarika Watts. I have a child at Ocean View now, a 2nd grader, and then I have a rising kindergartner coming up next year. I just wanted to echo the concerns about the start time. I know we have a really robust body of evidence about later start times for adolescents because of the sleep phase that they go through in puberty. We have less about elementary schools. I did read a couple of studies today that linked an earlier start time in public schools, public elementary schools in Kentucky, with reduced performance on test scores and such. And there's also concerns about, we know that younger children need more sleep, and so pushing that start time up makes it difficult for our busy parents to make sure that they get enough sleep. And then another thing I just want to ask the board to consider, we see that you put a lot of time and effort into these FAQs, and we appreciate that. My sense is that the questions are answered, but not really answered often. Parents are concerned about class size. Can you make sure that the class size is going to be smaller? To hear that the max size is 28:1 and we aim to keep it as low as possible, it doesn't really give us the information that we're looking for. We'd really like to have some sort of commitment about these questions that we're asking. Teachers will overlap together for 90 minutes. The question that we're asking, is it correct to say that the teachers are going to overlap for 90 minutes in the classroom? I know in that draft schedule, I saw the snack recess time was maybe 20 minutes, maybe 40 minutes, and maybe the partner teacher was going to be facilitating snack time with the other teacher. You know, we're asking these questions and we don't feel like we're getting the answers that we need, and so that's why you're going to keep hearing the same questions again. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm speaking again on another point, and this is about echoing the issue with class size and not just getting an answer on it. I'm asking for a commitment. Kindergarten parents would like a firm commitment that class sizes will not increase above 24 under the AM/PM plan, and that you have a transparent plan in place if enrollment drops. This plan, the plan for dropped enrollment cannot include increasing kindergarten sizes. When we attended the board meeting and the decision was made, initially it said that early bird, late bird would help us from having to increase class sizes. But at the end of the meeting, we said, well, we can't promise that. We're in a budget crisis. So here we are as kindergarten parents, knowing we have the shortest time schedule in the entire community, and faced with the notion that 28 is the limit, and we have no promises beyond that. On top of that, if we are all honest with ourselves, AM/PM is a disadvantage for the district, and certainly not a selling point for Albany schools. Specifically, when you consider that neighboring school districts will have 2 hours more of instruction each day, and likely most children in the state of California will be moving this way as well. There is also the cost associated with it. Anecdotally, the two parents who I attended all of the meetings leading up to the decision are not here tonight because they have chosen private schools for their children next year. I know a lot of people who choose between Albany and Berkeley for the first-year school for their children, and right now, those people who send children to Berkeley kindergarten will have 20 students in a full day. Those who send their children to Albany get 3 hours of kindergarten, broke-up schools, and a bigger after-school bill. With this in mind, we must be prepared that people may not be choosing Albany School District this year as they have in the past, if they have a choice. Do we have a plan in place if enrollment drops? And what is that plan? We would like a transparent plan in place. And as part of that, we would like a firm commitment to maintaining Albany kindergarten sizes to 24 or fewer students, which I will add is still more than what Berkeley does, and that you put a solid plan in place that you transparently share with us with what you will do if enrollment drops. And this plan cannot include increasing kindergarten class sizes.
I'm back. I have one more point. My daughter is doing speech therapy next year. We just went to a meeting, Anna, which was a really productive and really good meeting, and I felt really good about it after we left and made it through without crying. But she will do speech therapy for this year, and she will continue it on. So she'll miss 30 minutes of class time 2 days a week, like a lot of students who do speech or occupational therapy. We would like for there to be an option to parents for them to do it during before or after school time and not just during that 3-hour window. We know that typically they do it during their school day, but in the meeting it didn't sound like it had to be doing during their school day. It just sounded like that was the way that it normally goes. So my daughter will be in before or after school care for hours. She'll be there for longer than the amount of time that she's in her classroom. So if during that time she could do her speech therapy, she wouldn't have to miss that time with her teacher. So we're asking that the parents get the option to have their therapies done during before and after school care if they can. Thanks.
Thank you. Actually, Spice, I'm glad you came back up because I need to offer you an apology. I was rude. I apologize. I'm sorry. Back to the board. Student member Mala.
Yeah, so thank you to all the parents that spoke. I think there's a lot of opinions right now about start time scheduling, curriculum, missing class time. One parent brought up that a possible subcommittee could be made, and I think that would be a very good idea to talk about so they have more voice. And if it's their kids, they should have. It shouldn't be like an executive decision by the board, I think.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd be happy to jump in now because I agree with you, Audrey, that I think that there's so many different moving pieces, and I think if we just focus on one, which would be a subcommittee that could address these issues in depth. I know that there's Q&A, you know, but I really agree. There's a feeling that there's answers given, but there's no connection made with the concerns that are raised in the questions. I think it's easy for us to just kind of feel we answer the questions, and it's underneath the questions, there's other stuff going on, and I think that it's important that as we welcome these parents, if they haven't already been in the TK program, that they feel welcome and that they are important stakeholders. And I think that there was a parent that, that sent a letter, and I have to agree with what she said. I'll just quote it real quick. Rather than look for reasons why suggestions won't work, I request that you try to find ways you could make it work. And I think that's the spirit that I sort of feel has been missing, that we need to respect everybody. And part of that is really listening to what people's concerns are. And because of that, and all the work that has to be done on this transition committee, I just think we have to go to a subcommittee so that the concerns of these parents can be allayed to a certain degree, or in fact, instead of saying, no, we can't do it, no, we can't do it, let's just look and see, can we do it? I mean, what would we need to be able to do some of the things? And from what I heard from these incoming parents is that they have some ideas and they have some resources, and they just want to work with the district in a very cooperative manner, but somehow we have, I don't know why, we've distanced ourselves in a very formal way. This is really formal stuff, and I think what's missing is the spirit of working together as a community. And I know for all the people in Albany, there's different opinions, but I just feel that we have a group of stakeholders who raise legitimate concerns. Whether we can do it or not is still questionable, some of the things, because we are tied. There are some issues that I would say, well, we can't do that at this point. But in general, I think that if we could have a committee, a team, whatever you want to call it, to just focus on these concerns, I think we would go a long way to collaborating and coming up with creative solutions that will satisfy the parents for next year who have, got stuck with the AM/PM schedule. And so I, for one, would really like us to work more collaboratively in more of a spirit of let's solve the problems. Let's not put people, at a distance, which is what I feel I've heard from these parents and the presentation. And let's just work together. That is supposedly the Albany way. And let's prove it. Let's really, hand in hand, work with these parents.
I'll go next if we're going down the row. I was one of the people that proposed the transitional housing team. It seems clear to me that it's not functioning in the way that we hoped for different reasons. It seems clear that there are a lot of ideas about what that team should be doing, and there's a mix of staff and teacher decisions that need to be made. There's a real need for parents to feel that they understand the decisions that are being made, that they have a forum for voicing their concerns. I have my own concerns as a student who will move at some point in the middle of the year. So I know that feeling. I think that it seems clear that we need some forum for the TK and K parents to have a way to express that and to hear answers to their questions that feel meaningful. So I agree with you about that. I have a couple of caveats that I want to say. One is that I think there are ways in which you're getting answers that aren't satisfying because they're not complete answers. I think there are also answers that aren't satisfying because they're not what you want and they're not going to change. So my concern is that if we have a team and the expectation is that that team is going to begin to be able to make changes to start times or the structure of how services are provided, which my guess is are legally mandated to be required during the school day. So I think I want to be wary of setting up a team where the expectation is that decisions can be made that can't be made, and that some of these answers are disappointing because they're disappointing, and that we don't have room to change them either as a board or as a community. I think as part of that team, it's really important to figure out the structure of the PTA participation, because I think the enrichment piece seems really important, and the PTAs haven't been brought into this yet, even as part of the transition of the whatever the name of that committee/team is. Yes, THT. Let's just give it an acronym and forget what it means. So those are my concerns about the team, is that if we have a sub-team or a separate team or whatever we refer to it as, that it be clear what the sort of ability is of that team to set a scope that's realistic, that doesn't pull administrators and teachers in a way that is going to fragment things and make it really challenging for them. But it seems clear there needs to be some forum for being able to problem solve, especially things that are sort of out of the purview of the district, such as additional enrichment fundraising. I also, just one last thing, I think some of the things that you want might be able to be resolved in different ways. So for example, the anxiety about, and I remember this with my own kids, about what school you're going to be assigned to up until the last minute. If it's clear that whether you get AM or PM, you're all set for childcare, would that alleviate that anxiety? If we know that there are spots for all of the kids at Marin and Cornell, whether they get AM or PM, does it matter as much when you find that out? And I'm not asking you to answer this now, I'm just saying I think some of these answers could be provided in different ways, not by doing the assignment earlier, but by making more clear, do you really have to scramble if you don't find out until July? So I think part of what this team could do is also get at the underlying concerns and figure out how we resolve those if we can, and if we can't, that we be realistic about that.
Thank you.
I guess I'll just go ahead and say one thing. Finding out their assignment at the end of July is not okay. And I would recommend that we find a way to find it for them earlier. I mean, this discussion went on for a long time. The board made a decision, and this is what's happening. But to have them waiting until the end of July with 3 weeks left before the school year starts, there's got to be a better way.
Thank you. Vice President Doss?
I agree with that. I think it's important for parents to find out their assignments within enough time for them to make a plan. I can't speak for all parents, but I have an incoming kindergartner, and knowing where she's going to go and what time she needs to be there has an effect on a lot of things. Being able to coordinate all those things, it's going to take some time. Additionally, the community and the other programs in the area are not changing their schedule in order to conform to the AM/PM. So parents need to be able to plan for that. For example, if your student goes to school and they attend Tupelo, Tupelo is making the change and going along with AM/PM. That works out great. If your student goes to another program outside of Tupelo, they are not making the change to provide childcare for students that don't go to school until 12. So because they're not doing that, I can finish and then go ahead. I want to hear what you have to say. Sorry. But if I lose my spot, I'll be lost. Okay. So we need to give parents time in order to plan for that, so that's important. From my understanding of the special education, as long as it happens within the scheduled school time, it can happen. Within that scheduled school time, meaning the end of the day, not necessarily the end of the kindergarten day. But that's something that they need to work out with the special education teacher. They need to be okay with it. It has to be something that works within their guidelines. But the state says that it has to happen within the school time, and the school allotted time is whenever school schedules to get out, which is 3:05. But you guys can fact check that. It's fine. I'm pretty sure that's right, but feel free to fact check it. And just, pushing back the start time. Well, we've already made a change to the start time because the start time isn't usually where it is now. That's not when kindergartners start now. So since we made that change, I'm assuming we can make it again if it works better for a large majority of the parents. And then the last thing, the enrichment programs and how it correlates with the students for their lunch. Some of the parents kind of mentioned, that they received a free and reduced lunch and kind of how that would work because I didn't really see it on the schedule. So just kind of figuring out how that's going to work, making sure those students get everything that they need, the food that they need and everything like that. So.
No, thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm sorry that I jumped up. I do have an answer to one piece. It's only because I spoke with the YMCA today for a bit of time, and the YMCA is going to they're going to adjust their childcare before-after programming for Albany to match AM/PM. So I don't know about the other programs that we have in our community, but I do know that the YMCA is aware of it and that they are going to they're working to put something in place to address that as well.
That's good news. We should definitely formalize that and send it out to the parents so they can be aware, because the parents, this is all, the information that I'm sharing with the board during our discussion here is just, these are emails that I received from the parents, so they're just not aware of that information, so.
Yeah, and I really just learned about it during a conversation today. My guess is that the YMCA as an organization or agency is working on the details of it and then will announce it, I assume. I don't know exactly how they formally notify families about their programming, but the individual I spoke with said that they are going to be offering that for kindergarten families.
It's good news.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so first we need a motion to extend the meeting. We should take a moment to see, we have a 20-minute board policy item, a 20-minute LCAP update, and then 5 minutes on just to finish up. So we're scheduled for 45 more minutes. I think we can get the items done in less time than what's listed there, but I would hesitate to move them because our April schedule is extremely heavy. And so we're going to be looking at long meetings for both April meetings and into May, I think. Maybe can I get a motion to extend the meeting for half an hour?
I move to extend until 10:10.
I second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so some of the, and thank you, student board members. I appreciate it. Yeah. So some of the issues that were brought up by the speakers were announcing school assignments earlier, committee to deal with a number of different coordinations and things, the start and time of the day, and class size. I wanted to give administration a chance to address some of those issues.
Let me address the class size issue, or a couple of them. I'm not going to make any guarantees that I cannot guarantee, but I will tell you that in the 5 years that I have been here, our kindergarten class size, I believe, has not exceeded 24. I will make every endeavor that I can to keep our class sizes at or below 24-1. But I will not make a guarantee if it's something that I may not be able to guarantee, or that the next superintendent will be able to guarantee. But I've had a pretty good track record of doing that. I believe that we've kept our class sizes below 24-1. So I can answer that piece. The question about the starting later, I did speak with a couple of the principals, and I think that's something that we can look at. I think we need to be real careful just to make sure that we're not overlapping into other start times, but I think we can take a look at that as well. In terms of notifying parents of school assignments in their AM/PM schedule, I think we can do it by mid-June. However, I want everyone to be very mindful that it is possible that if we make those preliminary assignments, and as we enroll students throughout the summer, and we do tend to get a batch of students in the summer, some of them are University Village students, that we have to, and I'm going to ask Terry to come up and kind of help flesh out some of this. I need to make sure that when we're looking with our teachers at balancing, it's not just class size. It's balancing our English language learners across classes. It's balancing our special ed kids. It's looking at making sure that we have some balanced gender. And so I want to make sure that if we make these assignments earlier, that the possibility is that we may have families that may have to move a site, or they may have to move a classroom. And we'll try not to have the move between an AM and a PM. I can't guarantee that that is not going to happen. Also, it's not as clean as people think it is, where if we have somebody come in that we suddenly just put them into a spot. If someone doesn't like their assignment, they can go on what is called the school change wait list. So there is a much bigger process involved. And I'm going to be real upfront with the board. This is probably going to require me to temporarily hire some staff in the enrollment department to help Kristen, because she cannot do it by herself. And we are coming into the beginning of July not having a director of student services. Can you help? Am I giving enough information, or do you want to add some pieces to that?
Yeah, around informing families of their school assignment and their AM/PM assignment. Just like with other students in other grades for their early bird, late bird assignment and or their school assignment, the biggest challenge we have is student enrollment is a moving target. So in mid-June, we may have, I'm just going to throw out a number, we may have 100 kids. Out of that 100 kids, 75 could be boys, 25 could be girls. Out of that number, we might have 50 EL students. So we balance it as best we can with those numbers. 3 weeks later, a bus shows up and we end up with 50 more children. This time it's 50 girls. The moving target makes it really difficult in mid-June to give your assignment, because what we really want to be able to create at the end of the day, in the beginning of the school year, is a classroom that offers a balanced experience for students. Balanced between boy, girl, balanced with age, balanced with race, if we can bring in clusters of kids so that they're not alone in the room. The last thing we want is a single child of a race sitting in a classroom and 3 classrooms all alone. We want to be able to create a community. So doing it as Superintendent Williams says is possible to that group, but we need to be able to have the flexibility to come back to you and say, we need to move your assignment. Because what we want at the end of the day is an assignment that gives kids an experience that gives them a balanced class. You're not going to get your teacher assignment till later because we use the teachers to help us create that. But we may have to move between AM and PM. We may have to move school site. If people can understand that that is a possibility, then I welcome Superintendent Williams to hire someone and let's get it out sooner. But we don't want to look like we don't know what we're doing. And so if we come to you and say, here's your assignment, and then come back 3 weeks later or a month later and tell you, no, that's not your assignment, no, we have to move you over here, I wonder if that's as equally disruptive. So if that helps a little bit. I've done this for 12 years, and every single year someone is moved to a different school, or we have to open a class, or we have to collapse a class. We try to wait till the very end so that we only have to make these kinds of messages one time if possible. If I may take this opportunity to also say one more thing. The request on my end, and I'll speak for myself, to go to an AM PM versus early bird late bird was not because it was best for children. It was never done for that reason. It was done because our community put money to make sure 2 schools could be built. And the only way we can do it is if we all work together and compromise so that that can happen. So please, on record, understand, I never said it was because that was what was best for children. It is temporary. It is temporary for the length. I know it's not for your child, and I truly understand that. I am a parent also, and I understand. But I want it known that it was not requested on the administration end because we thought it what was best for children. It was because we have the responsibility of a bigger vision than just one short period of time. We want to do the best for what we can do for all kids. And I think the program we're offering within the instructional day, believe it or not, is probably a stronger academic program than our current program because you have 2 credentialed teachers in the room doing the work. Thank you.
President Trutain, if I could ask the superintendent regarding notification of parents earlier, like say in June, you had given us some numbers today about the priority enrollment, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like there's like 190 students that are going to be entering kindergarten in the fall, and is that given the issues that have been raised in terms of what you consider for a classroom, gender and ethnicity, et cetera, are you able to, at least with those numbers, start forming classrooms so that parents can be notified in June?
I think so first of all, as of yesterday, we had 36 new TK. New kinders that are not currently in TK, about 145. And then we have current TK students who have the parents have completed their preferences, about 45 students. So you're very close to the 190. I think there's the question about what is sort of this percentage threshold, right? If you have 75%, that's pretty much most of our kids. I don't think we are at that percentage point. Do we have enough to start building this? I think we do. But I think, again, one of my biggest concerns is if we do this, that people understand that their schedule may change. I don't want to guarantee and say, here, we're offering you this, and then a month down the road or into August, we say, to balance things, you're going to have to move. And I will say, I'm not a parent, by the way, but if I had to then move my child from a school site to another school site, I'm not so sure I'd be happy about that either. So the answer is, technically, we can do it. I think that there's going to be a little bit more issues in terms of balancing in the long run. It's going to take, I think, a little bit more time and more effort to do that. And I do want to leave it open, but when you're done, I do want to address the issue about the subcommittee. That's all.
I just wanted to add, I think probably enough has been said, but I checked in with the Enrollment Center today and learned that for the first time since I've been in Albany, which is more than 20 years now, the preferences for school sites is very, very skewed. We're used to being able to give, 95% of people would get their first choice, and that's not going to happen this year because 85% of the priority enrollments are for Cornell or Marin. The majority are for Cornell. So what that means is there's going to be a larger group of people who are not going to get their first or even their second choice. That just adds to all of the complications that we've been talking about. Kristen, the enrollment coordinator, was also talking about the August wave, which is a lot of university people moving in before their term starts and tends to have a predominance of our English language learners. And so as to not overwhelm any particular class or any particular teacher or site, there's going to need to be spaces saved at each site and in each class for those expected ELL students. So I got an email that said, you can project your enrollment based on historic. You just project your enrollment and just start filling them up. But it really matters the exact individuals that show up on our doorstep and trying to build these classes that Terry was talking about. So I believe I'm hearing from staff that you are going to do your best to see if we can't build these classes and get an earlier school assignment out. And back to you.
So I want to address the subcommittee. What I would recommend is that we temporarily suspend the rest of the transition housing team, because if we're going to spend a little bit of time working with parents specifically for TKK issues, I would rather be focused on that. We're getting into the latter part of our school year. We've got testing that's going to be starting. We've got a lot of end-of-the-year activities that are happening, and I cannot guarantee that I can get teachers or administrators to come to another subcommittee meeting. However, if I temporarily suspend the transition housing, because these are different grades, then I'll definitely get some staff members to come together, a small group. It won't be the big 20 group. Small group, I think I heard 2 to 3 parents, a TK or K teacher, and a principal, and myself, and our director of student services. So you're looking at a group of maybe 7 people to come together, to meet, to address some of these issues. I think we can do that, and then have to reconvene the transition housing team after that fact. So this way I'm not adding another meeting, another committee. It's just superseding that. So I know I'm looking over to the 2 people that are here, but if we suspended that, do you think that would work? Okay, so we can probably do that.
Board, what do you think of that suggestion by the superintendent?
Could you repeat those numbers in terms of, just repeat the numbers, please.
So this is just as of yesterday, which may have changed by today.
No, I'm sorry, not those numbers, the committee, the subcommittee.
I'm going by, hang on one second, the notes that I got, which was 2 to 3 parents, a TK or K teacher, I don't think I heard 2, 1 principal, and I heard someone say PTA. I'm not so sure we would want to necessarily have a PTA member on this one, because I think PTA is kind of governed by PTA guidelines, but, and if I have the Director of Student Services and myself, so you're looking at 3, 4, 5, 7 people maximum. You don't want a really big, Carrie.
May I make a suggestion? The TK and K teachers are working really hard right now. 1, to move sites, 2, to combine materials and books and lessons, 3, learning how they want to organize their year. I would recommend that you not put a teacher on that committee, that you let the administrator communicate with those teachers if there's questions, because the teachers aren't in a position to make any decisions related to some of the questions I'm hearing. Let the teachers focus on what they need to do right now to be prepared, and then if there is a purpose to bring them in, maybe bring one in at a following meeting, or let the principal relate the questions and or ask for the input. Honestly, I'm feeling you're probably not going to get any teachers willing to do it.
Thank you.
And Ms. Mansker, I'm not ignoring you in there because I think you're a critical piece of this, so maybe have you take that empty slot? Okay. And then I just need to know which parent will be my point person to tell me which 2 to 3 parents will be meeting, and we'll schedule it as soon as we possibly can. It probably will not be this week.
Okay, this was a review and discussion item. So it sounds like there's direction and things are gonna happen. We have some changes that are coming, and that moves us on.
Excuse me, I just want to clarify or make a recommendation. Could we have up to 5 parents if 5 parents are interested? It's still under 10, the total committee.
Hang on one second, please. I heard 2 to 3 parents. Can you do it in 2 to 3 parents? Or do you need 5? I mean, I think we should ask them, because they're the one. It was.
You have to go to the microphone, though.
So are we also, the other things that were?
The transition committee that I went to had 20 people on it. And I don't quite understand why we need to just stop that and move just to kindergarten for the next 3 weeks and solve all that and then move back. Can't we think about it like there was already a kindergarten teacher on that transition committee meeting? We haven't met in a month since it happened because that meeting was just kind of like, what are we all doing? You kind of know what you're doing. I kind of know what I'm doing. I would like this to be something that can meet longer, but that we don't have to go to 1,500 transition committee meetings where 15 of us don't speak the whole time. And that doesn't mean we can't have a quarterly one where we maybe provide input that those smaller committees, but it feels like as it's working, it could work much better if not just maybe the kindergarten team was thought about this way, but also Ocean View. I mean, Ocean View parents have some serious concerns and they deserve to really think about those concerns and maybe not at meetings with 20 other people, we only have 3 months. Maybe they want to have a junior high parent and an Ocean View parent and a junior high teacher. I'm just saying that right now there's already a kindergarten teacher on that large transition committee. There's already 3 principals. There's all the principals are on that committee. There's a junior high parent. There's 3 PTA members. All the members that I'm asking for this sub-team are already going to this transition committee. Why couldn't we just, from that, just say we're going to focus now in this transition committee setting?
Because I heard very clearly earlier this evening that you wanted a subcommittee.
Yes, from that team. And the way that the team's working is not, I don't think, in this current state, the best way for it to work. And that's why we're asking for it to be focus areas, and kindergarten can be a focus area.
I think that's what she's suggesting.
That is what I'm suggesting.
We don't have the other focus areas moving forward right now.
But then I guess what I'm hearing is that we take 3 intensive meetings, we figure out these things out, and then it's kind of done. And I guess I see this as something that would move in the same rhythm that the transition committee would, that there's going to be things more than just in the coming month.
I think as the larger team exists or comes back to life at certain points, it will certainly still have the mission of all of those concerns. But I think to move your ideas forward, I think this is the way to make sure that your concerns are the focus with the right group of people that's there, and that other team exists as a sort of umbrella that meets if it needs to meet as a group, or it meets in smaller configurations. I know I'm an Ocean View parent. The Ocean View parents have been talking quite a bit, that I think, and also recognize that that wasn't the right format for
So
them.
that's part of what I'm saying. And the other part is, yes, thank you. I would love this subcommittee, and I would love if 5 parents can do it. Of course I would love 5 parents, because I have to be honest, it's very intimidating as a parent to sit in a room and try to fight for things with the administration or whatever. It's intimidating. We don't know how things work. We feel a bit overwhelmed. So yes, 5 parents would be very nice. But if we get 2 to 3, we will also be happy. We just want the committee.
And in terms of PTA or certain people you need answers from, maybe they can be invited to one of the meetings, right? So it would just be focused on PTA for this hour or whatever, so that it, it's really focused, and because everybody's so busy.
Right, and I think that's the concern always, is respecting time but getting things done. And we keep talking about this elusive PTA. Well, I actually need to understand what's capable here. What can we do? How do we do it? And I think that's where a small group can better do that.
Yeah, and I would still move on, keeping it open for 5 parents and then seeing how many of them can make it, the meetings.
Okay, so I have
My
five parents. If possible, maybe a TKK teacher, principal, ACC director, our director of student services, and myself.
Okay, that's great.
That's 10 people.
Okay, good size. It's 10 o'clock now. We have the curriculum instruction and assessment item, Board Policy 5144.
Thank you, President Jertain, members of the board. I want to turn this over to Marie Williams, our Assistant Superintendent, who will be bringing forward this item. Ms. Williams.
Good evening, Board President, board members, superintendent, members of the community. I am bringing forward this evening Board Policy 5144, also bringing forward Administrative Regulation 5144. We typically bring board policies and administrative regulations at the same time, although administrative regulations do not require board approval, but we bring both documents so that you can see how they harmonize with one another. In the backup for this board policy, based on the questions that were asked about the conduct board policy, I did try to provide some more information on the front end about changes that were made from the policy as it currently lives in Gamut, and the rationale for those changes. So I won't read them for you, but they're here on the screen, so you can see the changes that were made, and then sort of just a brief rationale for why those changes were made. Additionally, there were just a few questions from board members about Board Policy and Admin Regulation 5144, so I thought maybe in the interest of time, I might just surface those with you now, and we could move along quickly. So one of the suggestions or questions was, I believe, around the opening of the opening sentence of Board Policy 5144, which currently says the Board of Education desires to prepare students for responsible citizenship, and on and on and on. And I believe, if I understood the question correctly, there maybe was a suggestion being surfaced about changing the language of that section in particular. So we might just sort of go through these points and make any changes that the board wants to recommend this evening before bringing this policy back at the next meeting.
Thank you. So, Director Williams, it sounds like you're wanting to work through these changes.
There were just a couple, and I would say that the first sentence maybe was where there would be the most opportunity for editing. The others were mechanical edits around exchanging the word comprise for composed, or exchanging themselves for self. There was a clarifying question about McGregor as an alternative education program or as a continuation high school. So the others I think I can answer pretty quickly.
Okay.
There just was a suggestion about maybe changing the opening sentence, so I wanted to entertain that now pretty quickly.
Okay, certainly. Board Member Duran.
Yeah, it was my recommendation to change it, and I don't know if the language that was used that's current is something that follows in other policies, so it's something that makes sense to kind of continue, but I just thought it was a little bit, strange is not the word we desire. I was thinking more, what I had recommended is the goal of the Board of Education is to prepare students, blah, 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 et cetera.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think it's a nice change.
Okay.
Yes, okay.
Moving on page 173, there just was a recommendation in the second paragraph under corporal punishment. The second sentence reads, currently, in addition, an employee's use of force that is reasonable and necessary to protect. Instead of saying themselves, there was just a switch to themself, which I think agrees with the subject. And so if that's acceptable, I would make that change also. And then moving over to page 175, there is, I try to catch comprised versus composed as much as possible. This one snuck by me, I apologize. We'll make that correction on page 175. And then there was a question about the removal of, so now we're into the administrative regulation on page 177. There was a question about the removal of number 11, which is reassignment to an alternative educational environment. So one of the members of our committee is Darren McNally, who is the principal of McGregor Continuation School. And he felt strongly, and we agreed as members of the committee, that we wanted to remove transferring students to McGregor as a disciplinary strategy because McGregor is used for students who are deficient credits, and so we don't involuntarily place students in that program in any event. So we remove that from the list, and then also sort of just a real fine point of clarification. McGregor is considered a continuation high school and not an alternative program. There are some slight differences between the both of those, so it makes sense to remove that, and if you are in agreement with the rationale, then we would keep that change as stated. And then in the paragraph underneath around suspension and expulsion, there was another request to change himself or herself to self, which would go along with our desire as much as possible to remove gender-specific pronouns from the board policy. This is for us a work in progress. We try to catch as many of them as we can. Finally, on page 178, there was a question around detention after school. And so the committee in discussion, and so these policies live for students in grades TK through 12. And so there is a perspective around sort of what might be acceptable for younger kids, and then there's a perspective around what might work and be acceptable for older kids, and so older students. And so the addition here around detention after school was around providing some advance notification for parents in the event that a student was going to be detained. Currently, as written without this modification, the language of the board policy indicates students, regardless of grade level or age, may be detained for disciplinary reasons for up to 1 hour after the close of the maximum school day. And so there just was some conversation about whether or not that was the best strategy, and if we might not provide some advance notice and still be able to use detention after school as a strategy. So that was a question that was posed, so I want to entertain any feedback that you have in regards to that point that was raised.
Thank you. I would just have concern that if the principals and staff have a process set up for the notification that a student is going to have after-school detention, that making a change here at the level of the board could really throw a wrench into that. And so I would worry about making a word change which amounts to a procedural change that would affect all of our campuses.
May I suggest, maybe in regards to that concern, we could share this policy as it's currently written in draft form with our district leadership team and get any feedback that they might have about whether or not the inclusion of that language would be problematic for them, and bring that feedback to the next meeting if that might help you make a decision about that particular part of the board policy.
Thank you. I think that would be appreciated. Board Member Hinckley?
I just have questions on this. Is that okay?
Of course.
So is detention being used across all the schools from TK to 12, or is it?
I don't know if it's being used by.
Like, because
Right.
we might, if it's actually used for K through 12, we might want different policies for the different grades. It looks like there used to be, in the old language, there was a different policy for K-5.
So maybe in the conversation with principals, I might clarify that for you also.
And then also you deleted, I don't mean you, but the committee, deleted the student shall remain under the supervision of a certificated employee. Why was that taken out?
So we do have classified employees that might serve as monitors for after-school detention, and so the specific reference to a certificated employee would remove that option, maybe from having a campus supervisor, let's say, provide the supervision, but we could always add in a certificated or classified employee if the point were to indicate that during the period of the detention, somebody would be supervising the student.
I would like to see that in there.
Certainly can do that for you.
Board Member Clark?
Yeah, can you go to 177, please, Julie? Or, thank you. Yeah, so where 12 got scratched off and then there's 11, the last sentence says himself and herself, and I thought we were trying to...
Yes. Yes, we noted that as a correction we were making to change it to self. So it's not reflected here, but in the questions, right. So the questions came yesterday, and so then my response is any recommendations could be changed here in this body, but there's not an opportunity between getting the questions yesterday and then today to be able to make the changes, yeah.
All right, and then on something to do with detention, it said they have an option to serve it on Saturday. Has anybody ever had a detention on Saturday?
No, so we did have a conversation about that, and the committee determined that while we don't currently offer Saturday school, it's feasible and reasonable as a disciplinary strategy, and so we didn't want to remove the option.
Can't offer it right now because it would cost the extra $1,000. So maybe
Currently not offering it right now, sir.
Your detention could be to be the fire monitor.
We could be creative in that way, I suppose.
Board Member Weinstein.
Question about that, when I was looking over this earlier today, is that Saturday school, would that be volunteer hours or would that be like instruction?
That's a good question. For the purposes of collecting ADA, though, we can collect ADA through Saturday school, and so I think it could both be instructional or sort of community service oriented, if in fact that were a conversation that we wanted to open up at some point because we had the resources or the need to be able to offer that.
Yeah, I was talking to a school district, or she was a board member in Temecula, and she started recently doing this Saturday school, but they were able to receive money for students being there on Saturdays, and so she was saying that the program actually paid for itself. She was saying that the way that it worked in their district was most of the time students who were doing things that got them suspended were also students who were missing school, and so because of, you already know this, okay. So because of that, it was paying for itself and that they've had a lot of success with that system. She was saying that the way that they did that in their school district was not really a volunteer situation, but it was where they would be together having conversations about different aspects of social justice, which I thought was really interesting. And I would love to see something like that happen at our school district.
Great, thank you.
Okay, first I'm going to need to ask for another extension. Can I get a motion to extend the meeting to 10:30?
Motion to extend the meeting to 10:30.
Second.
Okay, I hope that we don't make it till 10:30. No, but probably we're going to get pretty close. Okay, and then I believe that there was also a question on page 172, and I didn't hear it being dealt with, so maybe I missed it. But there was a suggestion from a board member that we change positive conflict resolution techniques to restorative justice techniques. And I think that there might be a difference there in what our administrators are able to offer.
Yeah, so I would say, thank you very much for catching that one. I did write it down, but it skipped me. I would say that not all positive behavior techniques are restorative justice techniques, so those two terms are not interchangeable. Positive techniques might include something other than students participating in restorative justice.
Okay, and so I think that the board policy will remain as is on that line.
Yeah, that would be my recommendation.
Okay. And this is review and discussion, and so you'll bring us back some information when this comes back to the board again.
Yes, so I'll bring it back at the next meeting as review and action, and I will bring back to you some feedback from our district leadership team specifically around how much detention is being used in the grade levels, and then also sort of the impact of changing the language around providing an advance days notification before administering a detention.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Okay, and that brings us to local control accountability plan update.
She made a circle and came back.
So I'll be brief on this one. I tried to provide as much information as possible in the backup, and then I have just a little PowerPoint that I wanted to share with you. So the purpose of this item today is just to give a little preview of the annual update. So one of the components of the local control and accountability plan is the annual update section, which requires that districts provide an analysis of expected versus actual implementation and performance on objectives, as well as expected versus actual expenditures. And so last year in the LCAP development process, in collaboration with our business department, we were actually able to, in regards to the expenditures in particular, really sort of identify and tag the dollars that we are allocating to the different actions and services, so that when we come to the place of reporting in the annual update and or communicating with stakeholders, we could be really specific about how we expended funds in implementing the LCAP. So I just wanted to give you sort of a 30,000-foot view of that today. I just wanted you to sort of get a preview of that. You will have the opportunity, of course, when you read the LCAP in its full and complete form, to see the actual versus expected implementation, as well as expenditures on the goals that we have. So the purpose today is just to sort of give you a taste or a sampling. This is a new process for us, and so we're pretty excited about how it can help us be more sort of specifically informed about what we're doing, and then sort of help us maintain accountability to what we are including in our plan. So we have 3 goals in the LCAP. The first goal is around assessing and increasing academic success. And I just wanted to note for the board and for the public here, you'll see that what I've done is just provide a summary of the actions and services associated with Goal 1 of the LCAP. The majority of our LCAP dollars are tied to salary and benefits. And so I sort of wanted that to be known here. And so, we prioritize having high quality credentialed staff on our campuses. And so a lot of our LCAP then is sort of highlighting that value around having high quality staff on our campuses. So you'll see every time that we are allocating dollars to salary and benefits, staff is indicated in bold so that you can sort of get the impact of that. So the total dollar amount of expenditures in our LCAP this year is $10 million. And so you'll see that $5 million, half of those, are here directed toward efforts to assess and increase academic success. The second goal in our LCAP is around supporting the whole child, and you'll see that almost all of the actions and services in goal number 2 are around salary and benefits staffing positions. We do have some other pieces sort of under, let's say, staffing and attendance program that might have to do with providing incentives, but those dollar amounts are really small. So the meat of our LCAP really in this goal and in the other goals is around salary and benefits. And then our third goal in the LCAP is around communicating and leading together, and this has a lot of pieces. And so sort of one of the one of the things maybe to think about moving forward is sort of honing the focus of this goal, as I indicated in the backup, because it's got a little bit of parent engagement, it's got a little bit of communication systems, it's got a little bit of bond measures B&E, and I don't know how much of that sort of continues to be relevant to sort of where we are planning for 1920. But again, we're expending $1 million here on salary and benefits, and then some additional remaining dollars on materials, supplies, and other services. So what I indicated in the board backup was that there are some areas that I think we sort of feel particularly proud in terms of implementing the goals, actions, and services in our local control and accountability plan. One of those areas is around supporting our K-5 English Language Arts Adoption Program. We adopted last year units of study in reading to go along with units of study in writing, and we have made some very concerted and assertive efforts toward really supporting that program. This year we were granted a one-year reprieve, let's say, with continuing to staff our 3 elementary TSAs. We know that while those 3 teachers provide a tremendous service at the elementary school, we won't have them next year, and so we really have focused this year on ensuring that we have provided all of the resources for classroom teachers to be able to implement these programs and get systems in place, because we know that the best intervention is solid first instruction. So this highlight around action and service 1.1.3, I think really speaks to that. Also have offered a lot of professional development and grade level collaboration that teachers asked for when we adopted units of study in reading, and have indicated that they have benefited from. Our second goal, our second action and service I wanted to highlight, and also the fourth one. So 114 is around providing culturally responsive teaching professional development, and 316 is around implementing ACT recommendations. One of the refinements sort of in going through the process of identifying how the monies were spent is that we have been sort of interchangeably using action and service 114 and action and service 316, which from the standpoint of being able to provide the services is not a big deal, but in terms of then being able to address in the LCAP, did you spend all the money that you allocated? We need to sort of do, be clearer about sort of what fits in which category versus another. And then today, actually, I found even another category, another action and service that we have, which is 246 around professional development around equity and inclusion. So we've got some sort of similar topic areas, and we are doing work in all of those areas, and so we want to make sure that the expenditures are really lining up so that we can be fully accountable to our community, and that our board can competently approve an LCAP moving forward. And then the other area that's a highlight, as we know, the high school is preparing for a CTE wing and to expand its programs, and so our culinary arts program and engineering design program are making steps forward and improving their programs, and so we wanted to highlight that also. In terms of next steps or areas for refinement, I've spoken already to this first bullet, which is around getting really clear about what is the difference between PD for CRT and equity and inclusion PD and ACT recommendation PD, and how do we sift those out and sort those. And then also we did a nice job, I would say, of expending our supplemental dollars, which are sort of our most restricted dollars. And when we are in our review process with the county, they really are interested in how are we spending these supplemental targeted dollars. And so in regards to this first bullet, we've spent down quite a bit of those supplemental dollars, and so we feel pretty good about that. But then you'll see in our second area for refinement around English learner instructional materials and professional development, we do need to implement a pretty aggressive plan. I don't know that that plan is going to be implemented and executed and all the dollars spent before the end of the year. But I think sort of what we see here is that, you know, we have really great English learner performance in general in our district, and so either there's an opportunity to think about how do we allocate the dollars, or we have to think about sort of what are the areas that we need to move forward in next in supporting this program even more. I do know that in some of our preliminary conversations about professional development for next year at the elementary level, we are looking at providing PD around integrated designated ELD. So that might be an area that we can speak to moving forward. In Action 2.4, around safe, inclusive, and positive school climate, there are so many things happening at the school site levels particularly, and At present, we just don't have really good systems for sort of assessing the impact. And so that, I think that's sort of an issue for all districts, so that will be something moving forward. We have, of course, a California Healthy Kids Survey that we administer once every other year. But I think in this area, we really want to, in order to be able to address the question of sort of the impact, we really want to think about how are we measuring the impact of our efforts around building positive school climate and culture. And then, as I said in goal number 3, just sort of honing the focus of that goal. So it's around communicating and leading together. And so what does that really mean for us, and what are our priorities in that area? So it's 10:25. You have 5 minutes to spend. Try to talk as quickly as possible. I will say very quickly that we had our first LCAP advisory meeting and are in engagement mode, and I hope to bring back to the board in May just a summary or a synthesis of the feedback that we have gathered from stakeholders thus far, as we did last year, to keep you all informed as the process moves along, so that when the 100-and-odd page document lands on your lap in June, you'll have some sense of what's in there. So thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you very much, Director Williams. I feel that our district is unique in the fact that we're really showing what we're doing with our LCAP money, which is something other districts are having problems with. And the list of things that we are accomplishing with it is very impressive. I would say for Goal 3, communicate and lead together, the district newsletter that was done last year, that was mailed out to all residences in Albany. If that's not being paid for through LCAP Goal 3 funds, it certainly could be.
I just wanted to ask if we could get a copy of that, if you could send that to all of us. I appreciate it, because it's a lot of thought there, and I need lots of time to reflect on it. So thank you so much. That was a great presentation.
Student board member.
Yeah, I also wanted to say that me and Audrey and Leo, who's the LCAP student representative, are working on gathering student input at both the high school and the middle school through general meetings, that are open to everybody, as well as meeting with specific clubs that represent groups of diversity in our school, such as BSU or Latinx or Speak or Stands. So we're trying to get a lot of student input in those ways. And then we're hoping to also go to the middle school and talk to them as well, because I'm sure they have some interesting things to say about ways that the LCAP money could be used. So we're trying to do our best to get input from the students.
That's great. Thank you very much. I also attended an LCAP input meeting, and the structure this year of not just using the simple survey, but basing it off of the California dashboard was just really, really useful because it introduced people on how to use the California dashboard and an introduction to the very detailed information that it gives about the district there. Okay, with that, we can move on to agenda items introduced by the board.
There were 3 committee assignments and duration for the August 2019 board meeting. Recognizing retiring teachers at a June board meeting, I would suggest the June 11th board meeting and not the last board meeting, as teachers leave at the end of the school year. And
Stick around for the last meeting?
sorry? I didn't hear what you said.
They don't stick around for our last board meeting?
The third one was the stakeholder panel for superintendent finalist interviews for the next board meeting. The April 16th board meeting is currently 3 hours and 5 minutes.
Okay. Any other items?
Are we going to have a special education update or a report, both in terms of the one that's just normally on the agenda, right, once a month, from the community, the special ed community, and then also in terms of what the superintendent is working with the parent advocate and what's going on there, so we sort of get a status update.
So I don't want to do a status update on the special ed focus group yet, because Cheryl Thies and I are still planning the final pieces of it, and we're meeting this week. So I actually would like to hold the 2 meetings first. So we probably, you're going to have to look at meetings. I probably not be able to do that until May. For the special ed update, I thought we scheduled it. I'd have to take a look and see when we scheduled it. But our meetings are getting, May's looking okay, but we're getting kind of tight.
Board Member Clark?
Yeah, I understand the next 2 meetings or 3 or 4, whatever, are very busy, so this is definitely not time sensitive or anything, but maybe something that we can try to get onto an agenda later. I never really thought about it until tonight. There was a discussion about people who are on committees and board members maybe having a preference on who they might want on a committee to represent a certain viewpoints. So if we can discuss later on, I don't know exactly how it would work, but let's say we have X amount of people on the committee that board members are allowed 1 appointment each or something. You know, we were elected by certain segments of the community for a reason, and I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I think it's a good thing, you know, because the board, it all comes back to the board anyway, and the board still decides, you know. So for us to have somebody on that committee who represents a segment of the community that elected a certain board member, I think is worth discussing, but that's just me.
Can you give me a title for that so I can put it on the issues bin? Like a short title, a description real quick.
Board members appointing
Committee members?
committee members, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was a very viable way also of
The city
building-
council does it, so it's
Yeah,
not
of
like I'm
building
just...
the stakeholder panel, you know. If we'd included our 2 student board members, we all could have just brought forward 1 community person.
And that takes away too when you get more people. Sometimes you don't get enough, but then when you get more people who are interested, then you're leaving people off, and that puts you in an awkward position as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely a viable means. Okay, with that, we are adjourned.